start all over again. I get it.
If I'm buying it, then
Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock.
All right, folks, we're live. City Commissioners, if you would please come to the dais. City Manager, City Attorney.
Present, man. May I have another?
Commissioners, find your way. We are live.
That's good. That's a good start.
We're live. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Tuesday, November 7th City Commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo,
Here.
Vice Mayor Scott Maxwell,
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy, absent for the roll, Commissioner Andy Amoroso,
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson.
If
Thank
everyone
you.
would please rise for the invocation offered by Commissioner Robinson.
We meet to serve our community, to serve our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions to promote the common good. We recognize our responsibility to the past and to the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessing on our deliberations and our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. And may we pray for the victims of all violence everywhere. Amen.
If you would all join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Up first, additions, deletions, reordering.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to reorder our presentations by moving the College Park Neighborhood Association to first place, as there are 3 proclamations right after it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I also want to, we've had some confusion about meters throughout Lake Worth recently, and there were 2 items on the consent agenda, item R and S, that are in relation to that, so I'd like to move those to new business C and D, R and S to C and D. That's okay with y'all? You okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended. Moved by the Vice Mayor,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Amoroso. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. With Commissioner Hardy absent. Okay, we're gonna move right on to our presentation, College Park Neighborhood Association update.
Yay!
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. It's been a while since I've been here. I see you've redecorated the place. TV sets are very nice touch. Mary Lindsay is here as our Vice President. I'd like to start off by saying that the state of College Park is in very good shape. Crime is down. Neighborly camaraderie is up. When we have had incidences of criminal mischief, we have implemented a system within our community. Neighbors watching each other's backs, neighbors picking up the phone and as Mary would like to say, make the call, y'all. We have had incredibly good responses from my follically challenged friend, my fellowly challenged friend, Catherine Barry, who's been wonderful in being responsive to our needs when on the very few occasions where they have arisen. One of the things that I think it's always been very important when I moved here, I guess it's now 11 years ago, which is almost impossible to believe, is that and I've been the College Park president, I think about 3 years. And one of the things that I have always hoped for, starting when I moved here, was a great public-private partnership between the people of the city of Lake Worth, not only in College Park, but throughout the city. And over the last 3 or so years, I've really seen that come to fruition in our neighborhood. We've seen a multitude and pretty much across the board new investment in College Park. College Park is now a very desirable community to live in. We have eclipsed West Palm Beach, in many, many ways. And that is really, in my mind, a combination of a couple of factors, but the most significant one is the confidence that the public has in the people sitting in front of me, that they are pillars of good government, that they are working hard to make this city better. We see that, we've been seeing that over the last 3 years in investments in the infrastructure of College Park, paving of roads, replacing of old pipes, and so forth and so on. So I want you to understand very, very much that the fruits of your labor and your good leadership are manifesting themselves in a tangible and concrete way in our neighborhood. I also, I'm going to turn this over to Mary in a second, but I also want to speak a little bit about Hurricane Irma. As you know, as we all know, there was quite a bit of damage done throughout the city. And as College Park president, I got a lot of phone calls about, obviously about the power, but about things like picking up debris and other things that people had concerns about and so forth and so on. And I'd like to thank all of you sitting up there right now, but I'd particularly like to single out Commissioner Maxwell, who called me 3-4 times a day just to, I was not in College Park. I was one of the smart, maybe stupid people that decided to leave, but I got to what I thought was a little bit of a safer place. But I was away from my house, and as we all know, that's a very, very uncomfortable feeling for a lot of us. And the communication between the people sitting on this dais and myself was truly extraordinary. And I was able to get on Facebook and tell people what was going on, pick up the phone and answer people's questions with a degree of certainty that I could stand behind and represent as accurate. So I thank you all for that. I have decided after 3 years that being the president of College Park has been a great pleasure, but I think it's time for new leadership. So this is going to be my last presentation to you as College Park president. It has been my honor, but at the same time, there have been things that I have not been able to do, and nothing major, but I just don't feel like I've been as effective as I probably could have been in some of the smaller ways. And so I'm going to leave this post. I will still stay involved. I will still help when I can. And but we're gonna be having a meeting sometime in the next, probably after Christmas, and we're gonna see if we can get a few new people to step to the plate. And I'll be helping them until they sort of get their feet firmly on the ground. But I want to thank you all for all the support you've shown our community, and College Park in particular as its president. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and Commissioners, it is truly an honor and a privilege to stand here tonight and represent this neighborhood association that I love so much. I think many of you know that I was served as president from 2011, I believe, through 2014, and then John picked up the baton as president. What's interesting is that almost every single board member that is currently in office in College Park was on the board when I became president in 2011. So these are all people who have, and the offices have shifted and changed, and there's been a couple change outs. But mostly these are people who have given huge amounts of their time, talent, and money to support this neighborhood association. Keep it going. And I personally want to thank John and all of the members of the board who have served so faithfully for so long. And it's not a question of burnout. It's really more a new ignition of ideas and enthusiasm, because there are so many new residents and families that have chosen to make College Park their home. So with all of this new enthusiasm and people saying, you know, we could do this, and why don't you do that, and don't you think we ought to? Yeah, we all think that's exactly what should happen. And we're looking forward to this new generation of leadership in College Park stepping up and taking this neighborhood even further, keeping College Park, the neighborhood we can always be proud to call our home. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very, very much. And you'll be missed, Mr. Pickett.
Thank you.
All right, we've got some proclamations, and I hope you'll all bear with me today. It was my turn for the flu bug, so I'm 4 days just finally out of bed today for my first full day, so I'm not contagious according to my doctor today anymore, so I'm good to go. All right, first up, do I have anyone here? This is our proclamation for the November 15th as GIS Day. Who's coming up?
We've got some people.
All right, come on up here. Now, it gives me great pleasure, really, to do this, because I know I'm gonna keep my distance from you just a little bit, just in case. When I know myself, I know Commissioner Amoroso and Vice Mayor Maxwell were here too. When we got here in 2011, there was no such thing as GIS systems in the city. When many other cities had had them in place for, I don't know, what, 10 years, city manager? At least? Yeah.
More advanced ones.
Well, when we talk about the future land use map, and we talk about, all these different things that we're those didn't exist. We had no maps. We had been struggling for 8 years with approving the land development regulations, I think, and the comprehensive plan that had been discussed for 8 years and still hadn't come to fruition. A lot of these positions and these things that happened were so fresh and new when we got here, and seeing you here, the physical presence of this actual, change over here in the city, this technological breakthrough that happened a little late. We're a little late bloomers on our side, but they happened, and your jobs and your position have helped to transform the city in ways that we could have only imagined back then. So we're very grateful, and it's my honor to read this proclamation for you. Whereas the science of geographic information systems, GIS, connects people, regions, and systems. And whereas the city of Lake Worth recognizes that an understanding of geospatial concepts is crucial to the wise use of our natural resources, continued economic prosperity, and the general health of all Florida residents. And whereas geography is a common language that strengthens decision-making for governments, communities, non-governmental organizations, and businesses all over the world, and the science of geographic information systems connects people, regions, and systems. And whereas one of the missions of the city of Lake Worth is to be known as the epicenter of art and creative thought in Palm Beach County, with maps being another form of art. And whereas, with many public agencies and private organizations in the U.S. and throughout the world incorporating and utilizing this technology, GIS is becoming the wave of the future for information sharing and management. And whereas the city of Lake Worth is committed to utilizing GIS to better serve its residents and make useful geographic information easily available to the public. Now, therefore, I, Pam Triolo, Mayor of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, by the virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim November 15th, 2017 as National GIS Day.
We
No.
Here, hold my map up too.
Mayor, hold your breath.
Well, it's part of your product.
Two of you.
I held my breath. Thank you so much. Up next, Pam Bergsma, come on up here. It's always my honor. Would you like me to do the proclamation first? I forget how we do it. Okay. Whereas this is the proclamation declaring November 2017 as Joey Bergsma Retinoblastoma Awareness Month. Whereas retinoblastoma, the most common eye tumor in children, is a very rare disease now occurring in 1 out of every 12,000 children. And whereas retinoblastoma is a disease that causes the growth of malignant tumors in the retinal cell layer of the eye. And whereas left untreated, retinoblastoma is almost always fatal. Therefore, early diagnosis and treatment are crucial in saving lives and preserving visual function. And whereas eye dilation examinations performed on infants at birth during the 6 to 8 week and 6 to 9 month well baby exams are vital to saving the vision and lives of our children. Such infant eye dilation exams are very inexpensive. And whereas the City of Lake Worth supports eye pathology screening at birth and at each well baby exam thereafter to assist in the detection of all ocular diseases in newborns, infants, and toddlers. And whereas vision and lives have been saved through awareness. Now therefore I, Pam Triolo, Mayor of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, by the virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim November 2017 as Joey Bergsma Retinoblastoma Awareness Month. Non-traditional picture, sorry.
Honorable Mayor and Commissioners, on behalf of Joey and all of the children of the City of Lake Worth and the state of Florida, I thank you so much for continuing to understand the vital importance of early detection of all of these eye diseases, which start at birth to preserve vision, eyes, and lives of our children. I'm going to start with the pictures just to go over briefly what we need to know. Maybe we need to take our child to an eye doctor. I learned the hardest way possible. This was actually Thanksgiving weekend with Joey at the Boynton Mall. I took a picture of a tumor in his eye. I did not know that we could photograph eye diseases. It was many, many months after this picture was taken that Joey lost his eye, and I was told to go back and look at my photos. And oddly, he just had his second birthday, and those hundreds of pictures that we took at his second birthday, there was nothing there. His whole eye was cancer. I had to go all the way back to November. He's born in the summer. I had to go all the way back to Thanksgiving weekend where I found a picture. And at the time, this was right in the beginning stages of this developing on the back of his eye. This picture would have saved his eye, his sight, and his life. So when that flash goes off, this isn't how we detect. These are actually fluke pictures. But with children, especially from birth to 5, which is when this disease is presenting, we have a 60% chance of photographing eye diseases. The back of our eye is red in color. So in that dim lighting, our pupil opens up and we get that lousy red reflection. We have taken a picture of our retina. So in that nanosecond, if a child has a cataract, a glaucoma, a refractive disorder, a tumor, whatever the case, we might catch it on film. It's not a given, but if you ever get that odd glow in one or both eyes, dark-eyed children's eyes do not reflect red. They will look normal when a flash goes off. So if the eyes don't look normal or the eyes don't reflect red, if there's an odd glow in one or both eyes, we want to be alert to those photos and we just want to take those children to the eye doctor. Now, every picture you take of your child can look normal. This does not mean they have healthy eyes by any means. All that indicates is that you did not photograph an eye disease. It does not mean your child is not going blind or worse. The way we detect is with a direct ophthalmoscope in a dark room. Using this correctly at any age can save sight or lives from birth to 100. It is a standard of care device, and it needs to be used just like a stethoscope is used at every well checkup throughout our lives. Now, they haven't been using them for us, and tragically, Joey didn't get his standard of care. If his pediatrician would have given him his 15 seconds in a dark room at his 18-month exam, he'd be 20 years old with 20/20 vision in the eye that was removed. That's how important this instrument is. The things developing on the back of our eyes at any age can take more than sight. This is how we get to eye doctors or back to eye doctors. It's truly the stethoscope for our eyes. Now, retinoblastoma is a rare eye disease, but it is one of the most common cancers in children. And in the eye, it is 100% fixable. When it gets out of the optic nerve, it is a 0 survival rate. So it goes from being 100% treatable eye disease to being the worst cancer a child can have. And that second cancer should not be happening in the United States of America. These children should have their eyes, their sight, and their lives. Through Joey's death experience, I learned that the standard of care is not enough for newborns. We need to dilate those little pupils. We have a video clip that we're going to show of a pediatrician who's been doing this simple little enhanced standard of care in the first year of life since 1984. Okay, that's little Emma. Yeah. The nurse had just weighed her. It's the beginning of the well baby exam. And they're putting the drop in the eye. Now, the baby can be asleep in the mother's arms. We just have to get the eyelashes wet.
The eyes are not dilated well. It's to take a look with telescope. Usually darken the room a bit, which helps a lot.
So now he's taking that 15 seconds to look at all angles of the back of that little baby's eyes. And if he sees anything, he'll, he's looking for an absence of red is what he's looking for. And I think the problem with them leaving the lights on is because they can see red with the lights on. The problem is they can't detect a problem unless the room is dark. That's coming from a pediatrician who's been doing this since 1984. And yes, it is cost effective. That costs $1.50 per eye. It's a 3-cent enhanced standard of care. So the 3 exams, which we have been asking for in the infant eye care bill, would cost 9 cents per infant for all 3 exams. When a child loses their sight, it costs us well over $2 million. We've got this little boy right here on the poster, little Nicholas, was going blind to a refractive disorder. And because of Joey's poster hanging years ago down in Homestead in a pizza parlor, his mother was alerted. And see the Christmas tree behind his head. This is why we do Awareness Month this time of the year. This is when the flash is going off for all of our kids during the holidays. It starts at Halloween and it doesn't end until after Christmas and Hanukkah. This is when we photograph more eye diseases than any other time of the year. That's why we want to do this now, to alert parents to these things. But the ophthalmologist that saw Nicholas said he would have been totally blind by the time he started kindergarten. Because of the early detection, he had 20/20 vision when he started kindergarten. We saved over $2 million on little Nicholas. That would pay for the eye dilation exam for every baby born in the United States of America for almost 8 years. So if we're talking about money, I mean, even if we don't care about the eyes, the sight, and lives of newborns, we're all worried about money. This is going to save tens of millions of dollars in every state in the nation, and it's going to provide our children with sight. So it's 17 years now. It started right here. We wrote the first proclamation, and it's been printed from Key West to the Panhandle throughout the counties. Everybody was using our proclamation, and they just used this proclamation this morning at the Palm Beach County Commission meeting, because I continue to get here in Joey's County and in Joey's city, the city of Lake Worth, every year. And I know one day this will be done. And I just want to mention Frederica Wilson, Congresswoman Wilson, for the whole term that she was our state senator up in Tallahassee, she filed this bill. I never had to ask her. She understood the vital importance of this quest of Joey's message, and it was always filed whether there was a companion bill in the House or not. She didn't care. She knew that it needed to be done. And whenever we did have a bill in the House, that bill got heard in the Senate. So thank you, Frederica Wilson. I miss you terribly. She left in 2010 during term limits, and I've never had another legislator pick up the baton and carry on. But I feel deep in my soul that one day this will happen. It will happen again. We will have a bill filed again, because this is how we fix this for these children. This is how we fix it for Joey and for the teenagers. I just did Boo at the Zoo, and way too many, especially of our teenagers, have not had their 15 seconds in a dark room. So I know we can fix it. We fix it for the babies. We'll fix it for all of us. So thank you so much, City of Lake Worth, for continuing Joey's message. I know he's smiling, and I know we're going to continue to save sight and lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. City Attorney, is it possible?
I'm sorry.
City Attorney, is it possible for us to, I know when the legislature comes to session or whatever, define that bill that was previously brought there, and if all would agree on our city commission to support signing that, to make sure that that goes up there? I mean, is there, what way
Make it a
to,
legislative priority for the city.
yeah, I would like to make it a legislative priority for the city.
Yeah, back in the beginning of the millennium, they were doing that from the City of Lake Worth. It's always on the Palm Beach County agenda. It's always on the Broward County agenda. And to my knowledge, it still remains on the Martin County agenda to this day. But I had quite a few cities as I was traveling around the state getting proclamations who did do that. So, yeah, we haven't done it for quite a while from the City of Lake Worth. It's been many years,
We
but
could
that
do
would be
that.
wonderful. That would be wonderful.
Or if we can piggyback to the county or something and and encourage our neighbors to do so too. Something
Thank
we
you
can do.
so much. And I just wanted to mention, I have flyers like this in the back of the room with all the other clues and stuff that are necessary. Please, everyone, take one of these and share it with a friend, because you never know who might take a picture or one of these things might be presenting and the parents not alert to it. So,
And if you
thank
get a
you.
chance, if you're gonna be here for a little bit, at least get everyone a chance if they wanna look at those pictures too, because that's very interesting.
Okay,
You can really
thank you.
see how to visually track it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
Where's my proclamation?
No. You took it. You took it.
Grandma's losing her
Thank you, Grandma. Okay, up for our next proclamation, declaring November 11th through the 19th as National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. We are going to welcome Michelle Howell Phillips. Welcome. Whereas, for the past several years, the National Coalition for the Homeless and National Student Campaign Against Hunger and Homelessness have sponsored National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. And whereas the purpose of this proclamation is to educate the public and advocate with and on behalf of people experiencing homelessness about the many reasons people are hungry and homeless, including shortage of affordable housing for very low income residents. And whereas the purpose of this proclamation is also to encourage support for homeless assistance service providers, as well as community service opportunities for students and school service organizations. And whereas there are many organizations committed to sheltering, providing supportive services, as well as meals and food supplies to people experiencing homelessness right here in the city of Lake Worth. And whereas the city of Lake Worth recognizes that hunger and homelessness continue to be a serious problem for many individuals and families in Lake Worth. And whereas the intent of the National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week is consistent with the activities of local organizations who assist those who find themselves without a home or shelter or the ability to provide a meal for themselves and their families. Now therefore I, Pam Triolo, Mayor of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, by the virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim November 11th through the 19th, 2017, as National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week.
Thank you, Mayor and City of Lake Worth. We were in Green Acres last night, and you all are joining a long list of municipalities that taking on this proclamation along with the Board of County Commissioners and the school board this week. So we are grateful. It is no secret that there are many experiencing homelessness here in Palm Beach County, in Lake Worth, and in surrounding areas. And it is really going to take a collective impact and community collaboration amongst government, business, and neighborhoods to really come up with solutions so that we can house the many that are experiencing homelessness in our community. So thank you so much for your time and your awareness.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have them all? All right, thank you very much, everyone. Commission liaison reports and comments. Commissioner Hardy, would you like to start?
Sure. So it's been a while since we met. There have been some interesting meetings that I was able to attend in the intervening several weeks. The first was the joint Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council meeting, and we did that in conjunction with the South Florida Regional Planning Council. So basically, there are 10 regional planning councils. From time to time, neighboring regional planning councils will get together and have a meeting. And that's what we did. It was a few weeks ago, and we had that meeting at basically the City of West Palm Beach's government building in the Flagler Gallery. And it was a very interesting meeting. We got some presentations from some folks in Orlando about mass casualty awareness, which was interesting, and who knew how prescient that presentation would be at that time. But there were two presentations that I thought were really just eminently important for the city. The first is basically a plan to help coastal areas have less freight traffic on our trains. And I think all of us have gotten an email or two about train horns and rock trains and all that stuff. And so basically, let's hope that some solutions can be found to, relieve some of that traffic. The other was really important, and it was basically about affordable housing in South Florida and the legislature's responsibility for that, right? And so basically, obviously in Palm Beach County, we have a pretty serious affordable housing issue, median rent being $1,900 a month. That's unaffordable for most families. Most families are rent burdened today. And if you ask yourself, why is that the case? Well, if you go all the way back to 1992, the legislature passed an increase on dock stamps, right? With the increase on these dock stamps going into a trust fund that is supposed to be used only to create additional affordable housing, right? So that was created in 1992. Since 1992, $2 billion of this trust fund money has been taken out of that trust fund and used for other purposes that the legislature, has deemed worthy. So what does that mean for Palm Beach County in particular? Just this past year alone, Palm Beach County missed out on $8 million of funding that could have gone for affordable housing. Now that's been happening every single year, these sweeps. And so basically, Palm Beach County has made it its number one legislative priority this legislative session. Obviously, there are people who are ideologically opposed to the creation of more affordable housing in South Florida. But basically, if you care about this issue, then you need to get on the phone and call your legislatures, because it's really having some pretty negative effects on all of us here. The other thing is we had an interesting planning and zoning meeting just this past Wednesday. There's a proposed development in my neighborhood that I'm glad was approved by the Planning and Zoning Council, and I hope to see things move forward there. The folks at Tropical Ridge Neighborhood Association are probably more active right now than ever, which is my neighborhood association. We had a meeting yesterday. There are more folks there than I typically see, and I'm really, really happy that Ray has continued to grow the neighborhood association the way that he has over the last several years, and I'm thankful for his leadership. And we're about to go into another legislative session, and home rule is really important, right? So the five of us who sit up here right? We hear from you more than any politician residing in a remote capital, right? We get your emails, we get your phone calls, you stop us in Publix, we talk to you, you talk to us, we understand what's on your mind, we understand what you need. And basically, over the last several sessions, the legislature has basically said that we shouldn't have the right to make certain local decisions, right? And so last year there was an attack on CRAs. This year that attack has come back. And I just learned, I was reading before I got here, there's an attack on local government's ability to regulate tree removal and tree trimming, which is very interesting. So, you know, what I would say is if you think that the elected officials who are closest to you have the best knowledge on what you need and how you should be served, you should get on the phone and call your legislators and tell them that home rule is a priority for you, and please don't hollow it out. And that's all I have right now.
Thank you. Commissioner Aversa?
Let me just piggyback on that. I call it an attack on home rule because it is an attack on home rule. It jeopardizes what we have the ability to do on behalf of the residents of Lake Worth. For instance, the medical marijuana. We have 2 dispensaries in the city of Lake Worth. You've heard me over and over, I support medical marijuana, but I think in 7 square miles that 2 should be enough, and that includes home delivery. So the attack on home rule, what has come out of Tallahassee that specifically affects medical marijuana is they now have said either you allow it or you don't allow it. So the way we look at it, and we're hoping that they will change their mind in January, that they will change it a little bit for cities like Lake Worth, because once we lift our moratorium, the way I look at it is we allowed it, so therefore we will have to allow it. I know Boynton has just approved it, which is a little better. You know, you won't have as much in the city of Lake Worth, but right now there's 7 companies. In January, there could be as many as 10, if not more, that could be looking to set up home in Lake Worth. And the way I look at it is we are 7 square miles, and there's a lot of things that we need in the city of Lake Worth. Again, I'm not against medical marijuana, but if medical marijuana is coming to our 7 square miles and taking up large properties all over the city, that means somebody else isn't coming to the city of Lake Worth. And that's kind of how I look at it. So I call it the attack on home rule. And it does not give us the ability to make the decisions that's best for the residents. And like Commissioner Omari Hardy said, we hear from you and we know what you're looking for in your city. And if they take away the home rule, we cannot do that for you. Moving on, I attended Palm Beach County League of Cities. I sit on their board, so we had our board meeting this week, last week, and their regular luncheon. I attended Royal Poinciana. I was pleased to be a guest speaker at Royal Poinciana this month. Great events in the city of Lake Worth. We just finished our Halloween event, Little Scream downtown. We had hundreds and hundreds of children trick-or-treating on the avenue in a safe environment. We had the costume contest hosted by Coastline Realty and the city and Paws on the Avenue. Thank you, John, for co-hosting me with me on the stage, and all the kids for the costume contest. Paws on the Avenue for hosting the pet costume contest. And then most recently, we had the Day of the Dead. This was our 2nd year, hosted by the CRA in the city of Lake Worth. And Jose is our organizer. Just a phenomenal event. If you didn't get to attend, please check it out on social media. Huge, huge event. This year we were so good last year, we were able to get grant money this year to take it above and beyond. It's at our new art center on the west side, and it was just a great, great event. Couple other events coming up. Veterans Day is coming up. Veterans Day Parade is on the 11th, on Saturday the 11th at 11. And then please, after the parade, stay for the presentation and everything that happens at the annex in front of the library. Also, Evening on the Avenue is every Friday night downtown from 6 to 10. We have bands, and some nights we have movies for the kids. Bonfires on the beach come back. The first bonfire on the beach is November 10th. We will have music up there also. And then Eden Place Community Yard Sale is coming up. So plan for that. That is coming up on November 18th. And that's in the Eden Place Community area on K Street. That's at the church at K Street North. And then Representative David Silvers is doing some mobile office hours. Coffee Talk with David Silvers. He'll be here at City Hall. That's your House representative. So Pam, that might be a good chance for you to reach out, and I'll also reach out to him. I'll be there. That's coming up November 9th here at City Hall. And then following that will be November 30th at Clary's Cafe, Corner Cafe. He'll be there from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. So either here at City Hall on the 9th or Clary's on the 30th.
Vice Mayor,
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I'm shaking it up. You like that? I'm going left. I'm going right.
Yeah, you gotta pay attention up here.
So I'm just.
I don't have a whole lot, but I do have a couple things. First of all, for the city manager, I'd like to see if there's any way possible we can get some sort of a code enforcement workshop, another workshop, and an update on their strategies and whether they're effective or not, what's going on. There's a little chatter out there. There's folks are starting to get restless about code enforcement again, so I think we need to double back around and just kind of verify some of their activities and the effectiveness of those activities. Also, for some strange reason, I guess it was a byproduct of the hurricane, but I've been much more sensitive to traffic throughout the city. And I'm asking myself, where the heck are these people coming from and where are they going? And why are they such a hurry? So do we have anything on, refresh my memory, do we have anything cooking here as far as a traffic study throughout the city? Because this is, it's nuts. I just, the congestion is in all parts of the neighborhoods. It's just mind-boggling. It seems to be getting worse.
We don't have any traffic studies per se that I'm aware of, Vice Mayor.
Is it something we want to look at? Because it just seems like there's a lot of people that are coming through the city that don't really live here.
And a lot of times incidents and construction activities in other areas, traffic's much like water.
Sure.
It finds the route of least resistance. Sometimes there's probably things happening around us in the general regional area, and folks will shortcut.
Sure. Well, I don't know why they're shortcutting through our neighborhoods. It doesn't seem to be any more effective or time saving to do that, but there seems to be a lot of that. I'm really becoming more sensitive to that. Also, as you all know, we just recently hired our internal auditor. And I wanted to propose to the commission here that we maybe have the internal auditor come in real soon in a workshop format and just have a dialogue on how we're going to interact and how we're going to establish priorities with the internal auditor and make sure that we're all on the same page as far as what our expectations are, short-term and long-term. So he doesn't find himself going down a path that maybe, you know, it's not the best use of his time at the present time. And finally, again, I want to remind everybody, thank you, Commissioner Amoroso. Again, Veterans Day Parade, a very, very important parade in my mind's eye. You know, my father is a veteran, my grandfathers and uncles were all veterans, and we don't do enough to honor our veterans. So please, if you come on out Saturday, it's no excuse. Most of us won't be working on Saturday, and please, if you know a veteran, encourage them to come. If you have to bring them. A lot of these folks, older veterans, are really having a tough time getting around. So, especially Commissioner Robinson.
Point of order.
And also, I think this is the last regular meeting we're going to have in November. So I want to wish everybody here in the building, and of course out in TV land and across the city and everywhere else, the happiest Thanksgiving possible. And just don't eat so much, okay? Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson.
Representative Silvers.
Can you bring the microphone around?
Needs to hear about the home rule. Very critical. Tallahassee seems to be
out of control.
Out of control is a good
One
word.
at a time.
And Pam, I wish you good luck with that. Should be passed. I had the joy of reading to South Grade Elementary, Highland Elementary, and at the library with the mothers, and it truly was a joy. saw a lot of bright youth that is going to be part of Lake Worth, and it was encouraging. It's a beautiful thing. Went to a Business Alliance, or we're going to call it a Business Alliance group that was interested in promoting Lake Worth and their businesses at Al Carbone, and look forward to that being successful. Went to, I was in Bryant Park and we're helping with the Department of Environmental Protection. They collected this Diana La Rosa collected amounted to a full pickup truckload of trash on the shore, and I want to thank Larry, our happy city employee that empties our trash cans and take care of our trash. He stepped right up and gladly helped us out. Government Day, Andy, I want to thank for having the children come to City Hall and participate in what the mayor allowed them to pretend that they were in a city meeting, and they were involved. In fact, they even questioned where the boundaries of Lake Worth are, and considered changing the name of Lake Worth to something, maybe the possibility of Lake Worth Beach. And they were involved enough to have people vote for it and vote against it. And they all stated their case very, very well. And I will look forward to those kids being leaders in the future. I congratulate the ones especially that didn't vote for the majority. Day of the Dead, again, Andy and John Faust and Ozzy Ona, the CRA, put on a fantastic Latin Day of the Dead. It's a remembrance, but it's a cultural thing that was fantastic at the Hatch. First appearance meeting was held here, and got 17 volunteers to work with Captain Bear and Lieutenant Johnson, and make a difference in how the people that are getting arrested are treated from the judge. I attended a homeless fundraiser at Blue Front Barbecue, and hope that money is going to be well spent. And NAPC is a fantastic group of volunteers, positive. I want to, Mr. John Pickett was fantastic. I think we could have interspersed Lake Worth with Lake Worth, or College Park, Lake Worth instead of just College Park, with all his positive input. But John Faust runs the NAPC and does very well at keeping that going as a positive. All the presidents are really stepping up and making Lake Worth a better town. And John is also president of Downtown Jewel and is interested in the raft race next year already. And they're flopping in March.
Yep.
And I attended the magistrate's code hearing, and I was really pleased to see the agenda, and then to recognize that all the amount of compliance that was being complied with. These people were cited, and I think, I think code is really getting the serious recognition that they're going to cooperate there was a lot of compromise, or not compromise, but cooperation between the code officers and the citizens. I thought it was a positive. Tree Board is meeting on Thursday night and going to have an educational thing at the library at 6 o'clock. And Thanksgiving is coming. We have a lot to be thankful for. November, I think, should be the last month that we have our shutters up, I hope. And that bulk pickup is no longer going to be an excuse to have bulk pickup everywhere, anytime, because of the hurricane business. I truly am getting tired of seeing debris on the street any time of the week in a district that it isn't being picked up. Street light assessment was done at night by the utility department, and I hope they have their list of all the lights that need to be worked on, and they need to have the lights back up. That's it.
Okay. I want to say that when the kids came in here, it was really awesome. And I just want to mention, Commissioner Robinson, that 3 of the 4 people that sat in the mayor's chair were women. Just saying. Just encouraging them, sorry. Told them all they can have my job. Many years from now. A couple of different things. Day of the Dead, I'm very sorry, Commissioner Amoroso. I know how hard everyone works on that. I've been just laid up with this stupid flu.
We missed you.
Oh, I know, I missed you too, and I heard it was fabulous, so thank you. What the Vice Mayor mentioned about code enforcement, I really think City Manager, I mean, at least quarterly, if we can have, I mean, it's something that we hear so often in our day-to-day, you know, in our daily emails, in our daily phone calls, there's always some issue of code enforcement in it. It would be great if we can have an update quarterly on code enforcement. Where are we at? What are the types of issues that we're facing? What are the trends that we're seeing? So that we can offer, you know, we can help, God, I can't even breathe. That, you know, we can get some people in here so that we can start talking about those issues and see where we're at with them. I think that's a great idea, Vice Mayor, but I think we should make it more, I think we need to be more accountable. It's a common problem. You know, we change things from code enforcement to code compliance, you know, and I'm glad for what Commissioner Robinson mentioned, that we're seeing more people come into compliance than ever before. But there are, it seems that the same things that happen during certain periods of time are the same things that are happening in other areas, and they become these trends. And it would be good if we can kind of, you know, handle them all on a regular basis. Because I think the more we put the heat on, the more we're going to start to see change happening a lot faster. Code enforcement's doing a really good job, and I'm so happy that things are going in a more positive direction. But I think that if we make things more accountable too, we can actually see progress happen a little bit faster. And at least the people can then be involved on a quarterly basis with their own code issues. They can come to those meetings when they're there and be part of the solution. So I think that feedback would be helpful. The traffic, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but the storm relief at John Prince Park, it basically shut down downtown Lake Worth into Lantana, especially that Saturday, because it was a makeup day for people that couldn't come because they were working during it. I did put a call into County Commissioner Kerner on that Saturday. It literally was locked up onto the interstate at 10th Avenue North, 6th Avenue South, Lake Worth Road, by where the interstate would be, and Lantana. And there were people that couldn't get to their own businesses, employees couldn't report for work, people couldn't go to the shops and businesses, and I got a call from a number of business owners saying, hey, we got hit hard enough through the storm, we're just licking our wounds. Now here we are for a whole week after the storm, and we're shut down again. So he was very, very understanding of it. He had thought that it was going to be out by the fairgrounds, but that didn't happen. So I don't know exactly, but I think that enough people made phone calls that will be reconsidered next time around. And I just wanted to make sure that we had put our voice in there. And pretty much, we're a downtown city. It locked up downtown for many days, and I know PBSO had real fun with that too, didn't you? Yeah. So, and it really, all the highways were backed up too. 95 was backed up, 3 exits. So, I'm glad we were able to get help to it, but we've got to come up with a better traffic solution and offer detours and whatnot. They've got to think through a little bit more. Veterans Day, I want to say thank you to 2 commissioners sitting up here with me right now, Vice Mayor and Commissioner Amoroso. We were able to, and a gentleman, I know if you were here then, you would have been right next to us. We were able to bring the Veterans Day Parade back. It was something that was eliminated a long time ago. We brought it back. Also, family full of veterans in my family. It means a lot to us, and I really hope that you'll come out this time around. Normally we don't get to host our own Veterans Parade on a weekend, but we always host it on the day it falls, and that's the one thing so we don't conflict with West Palm and other cities that do it. So we get to have it on the weekend, which means I want to invite everyone to please come out and bring the kids and bring your families and, let the kids know what it's all about and be a part of this. Any veterans that you want to join us up on our float, I offer that invitation out to you. I know we've done it in the past. I would love to have you on board our float this year. I'm sure you guys would love it too. And let's remind them, not just Veterans Day, but when we deal with all the holidays, national holidays, and where they're putting their lives and their families are worrying about them. And I know our Memorial Day ceremony that we have, here at Pinecrest. Let's get our families more involved and come on out and support the families of veterans because, yes, we've lost so many. We have many members, elderly members in our family that are veterans. We have so many young people also moving through the ranks too that need to show our support. And we watched it dwindle in recent years, and they really could use your support. And the kids need to know about it too. Make them a part of it. Thank you. And then one last thing, the MPO. You remember that story about Boutwell Road? Remember that one that went, well, the governor said we had to have it on our long-range plan, and then they didn't pass it. They vetoed it. And then he said we have to have it on the 10-year plan. And then we got on the 10-year plan, and then he said, no, it needs to be on the 5-year plan. So then we got it on the 5-year plan. Well, I'm happy to say that the MPO has graciously moved our Boutwell Road project up from the 5-year plan to the 3-year plan, which is actually a 2-year plan when we look at it. So actually that funding is coming through a lot faster than we had initially thought. We got it on 10-year, then 5-year, and now 3-year, and now it's going to be up in the next 2. So it's going to really help us. We know we've got business. When you say, why does that matter to me? Well, you've got brand new businesses investing in our tax base out there, and they're bringing in lots of jobs. We've got one business who's got tractor trailers that literally can't come in and out of the facility and lease those facilities to provide to lease to new businesses because they can't get in and out. So, we've got to get that road fixed, and we're going to do what we need to do. We've got a lot of investment coming into the community. I'm very, very excited. So that's really, really good news. And in reference to MPO also, the quiet zones that Commissioner Hardy mentioned, they will be funded by the MPO. The quiet zones that we're going to have coming through our area when those railway crossings are done for the all board. So
Brightline.
Brightline. Excuse me. Changed it, whatever. And then impact fees was the big conversation on MPO. Other than that, I was just smiling. The impact fees, that's really a big. All the cities stood up and said, why are we paying county impact fees on properties that are being invested on in our local community? And it'd be one thing if the county was fixing the roads that affected those properties, but they have no planned projects for any of the roads in the areas that are being invested in within our community. So why are we paying impact fees, large impact fees, millions of dollars of impact fees to the county to do road projects for when investment happens and there's no road projects being done in our city? So a lot of municipalities feel the same way. I'm sorry, it's very hard to speak when this stuff does. Feel the same way, and that's kind of what we've all been talking about in reference to that. To see if there's some sort of flexibility or what's going on or how it's going to be handled in the future. But I know this is going to be a hot topic of conversation in the coming months, so I'll keep you posted on that. And that's it because I can't speak anymore. Moving on. Let's look for public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda items. Please, you talk now. Joseph Torres, Commissioner number 1, followed by Kathy Turk.
Forgive me, please give me an extra minute. I'm really angry, I'm upset at the death that we just had on 12th. I had got up and watched the news that afternoon, and I'm having issues next door with other things that's going on, and it's just too much going on. I'm in the front line, I'm in your core, and I'm gonna say to you guys, forgive me and forgive me to the police. So I was assaulted today at the Sunoco, one of the thugs, but forgive me, police, because I'm angry out there on the front line with what's going on my street and my block, because they drop off people in front of my house, they get in their cars. A guy has a white Maxima just like mine. One of your dealers pulls in front of my house and parks. The next door have him do it, and they're at the corner. I'm looking 15 people down there. Then they run off with, it's just too much going on in my block. You're not understanding. Thank you for all the work y'all do, and God bless you. But we have a serious, severe problem. In front of my house, you have your workers that just built your property right here, this building. They live, some of them, 507. That's a cartel. You understand? I have 5 homes in my one block. 4th Street, in back of the Sunoco, the shuttered homes, the corner, 2, 3, all 3 of them. 415. Y'all have to fix this. Code enforcement need to get them guys out of here. This house, the boathouse, these trees that you put up here from 76. At night, it's pitch black. The thugs are using it. Next door. This is constant. My mother's coming next week. I had to move her from my house because she can't live there in my home. I bought this house to live here for her and her health. She can't. I come out my door, you got shrubbery issues here at a problem area. You're not gonna tell me you're not gonna have these trees removed from this corner, because somebody's gonna do this for my safety and my family. This whole corner should be level and cleaned out, period. Forgive my tone. There's other things. I'm gonna come to the next meeting more prepared because I wasn't today, and I was hit at the Sunoco with the vagrants sitting there. I come out, my parking lot is right there. I see them. I'm constantly calling them. I'm here now, we got a camera. Whoop-dee, do something. And I apologize for my tone. Forgive me. And especially seeing the Texas issue, I'm not a crazy. I want y'all to understand, I am not a crazy. I went to the sheriff's office and I'm not a crazy. I don't have a mental problem. I can carry a gun if I choose to, but I'm not running in your city with a pistol. But if that guy, you check your camera you just installed at 1 o'clock today at the Sunoco, and y'all need to get him because he runs around with a gun.
Thank you, sir.
God bless you. And I'll see y'all next meeting with a better preparation. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. Kathy Turk, followed by Richard Garcia.
Hey, first of all, I love all of you and I respect all of you. I appreciate being able to be here. Kathy Turk, 901 North B Street. I am here to talk about first of all, I am the newest member of the Planning and Zoning Board. I feel it's a privilege. It's truly a privilege to be able to help my community this way. We did have an 85 low-income apartment complex on the board, we voted on that last week. We had a lot of people speak on both sides of this. One of the things in favor of it, they spoke of the need. Before I went to this meeting, I did a search. There was 22 apartments, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments in Lake Worth, in the west side of Dixie, that were available for rent at the same size, lower, or same rent. Including the apartment complex right next door to where this development was going to be. And they have a beautiful 2-story complex with the children's playground, and they have bigger units, less expensive. So I kind of, the need wasn't in Lake Worth. Another comment that was made was an inference that a vote against this was a vote against low-income people. That one kind of hurt. I moved to Tropical Ridge 2 years ago. Tropical Ridge does not hide its poverty. I knew exactly what I was moving into. My neighbors who were there, who spoke against this, they're not prejudiced against low income. We're in this neighborhood. We know what it is. It's diverse, There is low income. There's a lot of people who don't speak English. There's no prejudice against that. I voted no because I did some research. The research shows all of the data, including the Stanford Center for Poverty and Inequality. All of the data shows that when you take low-income families and children and you put them in disadvantaged areas, they have an extremely hard time getting out of poverty. I know that we all love Lake Worth. I know that we're working to fix Lake Worth. But the facts are is that there are so many gunshots that people don't call anymore. The facts are is that we have helicopters over our heads, we have drug dealers, and we have prostitutes on our streets, and the crime is really bad. Those are just the facts. And so when we bring children into these areas and we put them in schools that are overcrowded and they're C-rated, I voted no because I thought we owed it to the people who are here to help continue to fix these problems before we piled on. Literally piled on. 400 people, 3 stories high, 1 city block, no playground. These low-income tax credit buildings are brought into, only 17% of them are actually put in areas of opportunity. That's an area where the schools are good. That's an area where less than 20% of the children attending the schools are eligible for free lunch programs. These are areas where people of poverty have an opportunity to rise above. Anyway, I think we have a storm coming. I hope we prepare for it. We've got a lot of kids coming into our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Garcia, followed by Peggy Fisher.
Peg should really go first. She brought up my card. Richard Garcia, Chair of the Finance Advisory Board and Chair of the Bond Oversight Committee, which was convened last night by the City Attorney. We convened. We had 12 of us. We had 2 members missing from the FAB last night to inaugurate the committee. We had some issues. There were some questions that could not be answered either by myself or the City Attorney as best we tried. We had no engineering staff. We had nobody there to answer specific questions that some of the members had. We were hoping to have an orientation, as you know, that we talked about for several months, to have certain people in place to answer those questions and to give that orientation. So we're hoping that for our February 5th or March 5th meeting, wherever that comes, that we'll be able to get those personnel in place to give our members the opportunity to learn more about what their mission is. We had a little problem with that as well, where it seemed to drift apart, and we were trying to draw them back into what the focus was. It's pretty narrow scoped with the Bond Oversight Committee, so we're just looking for a little direction and a little help with from city staff, engineering and what have you, and accounting, so that we know where those numbers are coming from to answer the questions for the members. One glaring thing about that meeting was that despite it being touted heavily for months and months and months and months on end, and having the ballot language to form the committee, no one came. None of you, I know you were sick, Madam Mayor, we talked about that, but no one. No senior city staff, no department heads, no engineering staff, and not one elected official showed up to this meeting for the inauguration of it. Made people feel a little like it was all for show. So I think maybe that's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be looked at a little more carefully. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Peggy Fisher.
Peggy Fisher, 508 North A Street. Well, I did go to that meeting that was just referenced, and there needs to be some clarification provided by the elected as to what your resolution actually means. That's all I'll say on that. Traffic. For years, I've stood here and said North A is not a commercial truck route. I've asked the city to address that. I've asked the city to address the intersection of North A and 10th Avenue. So we see how far that's gone. I proudly live in Tropical Ridge with Ms. Turk, and I second her feelings, but I'm going to take it even further. I'm beginning to feel that there's a perception in this city that east of Dixie is great, west of Dixie doesn't need that much help. And I don't like that perception at all, but I get that perception. I echo what she said. I have the feelings. We are single-family homeowners in this city, just like anyone else, and we have one vote, just like anyone else who lives in this city. I don't want it to be that way, but I can't say that my homeowner association president would come up here and talk glowingly about the neighborhood association and the neighborhood like College Park. My other comments are going to be sort of hard to take, but I'm going to say them. I expect open, straightforward communication from the elected officials of this city and from staff. I don't expect things to be hidden on consent agendas or hidden by not being quite so open with the public about things that come up in public meetings. Let's don't repeat them, because if we don't repeat them, the public might not hear them and be concerned about them. Whether it's a huge FEMA impact that we might have, because it took for a long time for those millions of dollars of FEMA to come out in the open, or a problem with one of our facilities that might cost residents in the city multi-million dollars. I expect that information to be shared with the public, not hidden from the public. I don't like resolutions on consent agendas because you're not discussing them. You're not discussing those resolutions, and then you're going to bring them back for a public hearing. You owe us, as the constituents you serve, to tell us about what's going on and decisions you are being asked to make. I really want more, and I hate the word because it was bandied around in all sorts of negative terms, but I really want more transparency. Thank you.
All right. Do you have any more cards?
That's it, man.
Seeing there are none, we're gonna move on. Approval of the minutes.
So moved. Seconded.
All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Consent agenda.
So moved.
Remember,
Seconded.
remember too, the consent agenda, I asked to move items R and S, and they've been moved to new business C and D. Need a motion on the floor. I'm sorry, who made the motion?
Vice Mayor Maxwell,
And seconded by?
Commissioner Hardy.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor state so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Okay.
Moving on to, I need to take a break. Would you mind taking?
I don't need that, I can do it from here.
Okay, thank you, I'm sorry.
I'm not allowed to have anything that looks like a baseball bat. Okay, no, item number 11, unfinished business, ordinance number 2017-27. This is the first reading of amending Chapter 23 Land Development Regulations, Article 5 Supplemental Regulations, Sections 23.5-4, Historic Preservation, and set the second reading and public hearing for December 5th, 2017.
Want me to read it, Mr. Mayor?
Please do.
Ordinance 2017-27, the City of Lake Worth, Florida, amending Chapter 23 Land Development Regulations, Article 5 Supplemental Regulations, Section 23.5-4, Historic Preservation, to refine policies, rules, and regulations relating to historic preservation, prime severability, the repeal of laws of conflict, codification, and effective date. As you see, Pam Ryan from our office is here, along with William Waters, who've been working closely on this matter.
We need a motion, I'm sorry.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Hardy. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Commissioner Robinson. Ms. Ryan, the floor is yours.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Ryan, and as Mr. Torcivia stated, I am with an attorney with the law firm of Torcivia, Donlin, Gatto, and Ansay. I also have the privilege of serving as the attorney for the Historic Resources Preservation Board and the Planning and Zoning Board. I will give a quick overview of how we got here and then give you the highlights of the ordinance and answer any questions that you might have about the ordinance. You cut me off.
Commissioner
If you could-
Hardy.
I'm not sure if it's being picked up on the mic.
Oh.
Yeah,
That
why
was
don't you
all.
hold the microphone? Just
That
take it out the stand.
I'm not gonna take it off the stand. Okay, I'll talk a little louder, okay? If you will recall, the city manager brought an ordinance to this commission a few months ago to revise and, I will say, update the current preservation ordinance after receiving complaints from citizens directly and through you as commissioners regarding the difficulty that many of the residents were having concerning getting their applications approved quickly, the type of applications they had to get approved through the Historic Preservation Board. Mr. Bornstein hired outside counsel to draft an ordinance, and unfortunately, Ms. Stroud did her job too well. The ordinance that she drafted, while it did give a lot of flexibility in the Historic Preservation Ordinance, it did not pass muster with the state. We sent it to the state as we had to under state statute, and they took issue with many of the sections that we tried to, that we deleted, things that we tried to add to make it easier for our constituents. So after that, Mr. Bornstein tasked me with the responsibility of working with the state to try to come to a compromise. And after having many phone conversations with them, emails, we traded documents back and forth. We've come up with a document that I think that you'll be pleased with. It still relaxes many of the rules and makes it easier to get hurricane protection, et cetera, while at the same time keeping our certification intact. So that's the overview. Now I'm going to hit the highlights. There are only a few major things that were changed in the ordinance. The main theme that you will see throughout the ordinance is design guidelines. The state really emphasized the importance of having design guidelines, and they felt that we would not have the issues that we're facing right now if we had some design guidelines which had illustrations of the types of doors, the types of windows that a resident could put into their homes, instead of them really just coming to the city staff and trying to figure out what it is that they could have. So we have put design guidelines in this ordinance. You'll see it defined. You'll see it coming up over and over again. So that was a big deal. And now it's going to be the controlling document. I will tell you that last month, the staff sent out an RFP, and we received responses, and you should actually have a contract in front of you in the next couple of months to have someone to develop those design guidelines, hopefully by the middle of the summer, maybe early fall next year in 2018. Also, the ordinance clearly delineates between the treatment for landmarks and contributing structures versus non-contributing structures. Before, the ordinance didn't do that, and now we make clear in the ordinance that if it's a non-contributing structure, staff will no longer review any of the alterations or additions as long as it's not visible from a public street. If it is visible from a public street, then one of the main things that the state wanted us to add was that we would still consider the integrity of the entire neighborhood. And so you'll see that that sentence is actually in there a few times in the ordinance. You must always consider the integrity of the entire neighborhood. But other than that, non-contributing structures will not be reviewed very closely. And there are there's some relaxation on contributing structures as well. Windows, we're relaxing the rules on those. If the cost of getting new windows is more than 25% above the regular cost or the cost that the person is bringing forth, then staff will now consider, and HRPB will now consider that cost in making a decision. Also, we're no longer regulating fences. I know that was something that one of the commissioners raised. Other commissioners had some issues with it. But if a person wants to have a fence, they no longer have to appear before the HRPB or before staff to have a fence. It will just be controlled by the regular LDRs. So if you can get a fence in one part of the city, you don't have to go through anything special with HRPB to get a fence installed. Hurricane protection, now treated differently. It is of major importance. I spent a lot of time with the state on that, letting them know that it was important to this board that we give some consideration to those who want to have hurricane impact windows. We allow those now. You still have to look at the neighborhood, and The windows still have to be the appropriate type of windows, but the HRPB board will no longer have the ability to just outright say no to hurricane protected windows. And I think that's pretty much it for the major highlights of the ordinance. If you have questions, I'm right here ready to answer.
Questions, gentlemen? Commissioner Amoroso.
Thank you for all your hard work. I'm very excited about the design guidelines, but I'm concerned about the design guidelines only because I have 10 people calling me today about, not being able to get issues. If the design guidelines, and in my opinion, the design guidelines is 1 page of 4 doors. If you can use those doors.
Yes.
But I'm concerned that it's not here and we're gonna vote on something. And I'm also concerned that we're actually paying a consultant. We have all this staff on board that why are we going out to get someone else to write our design guidelines when every time historic preservation or one of these boards see it, they have, they've been working for years. They have the doors, they have the windows. Why are we having to go out?
The state we were able to receive a grant from the state for the design guidelines. So they're paying for the majority of it.
Okay.
We're adding a little bit more money because we want our design guidelines to be very specific. But I believe it's $30,000 for the design guidelines and $55,000 or $50,000 for the survey. We're also having a survey of the historic districts done. So more structures might be included and some may be taken out after the survey.
Follow-up, Vice Mayor? And that was another concern is the surveys are being done.
Yes.
And when listening to the meetings or sitting in on the meetings, I'm hearing that it may be contributing. Now, from what I understand in the survey, there may be other non-contributing homes. People have bought their non-contributing homes, knowing that they're non-contributing, and then once we get the survey, they may be contributing. That's concerning to me. And, we're looking at dates that make it.
We're going to back up a little bit. The CLG program did grant the city an award to do design guidelines. We attempted 3 times. We did get it. We are going to be bringing forward, hopefully, your December 5th meeting, a contract with, I believe I can announce it, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Commission to help us develop the design guidelines because we do want things that represent the specificity and particular nuances of each historic district. Though we do have a lot of staff, 2 people, they are overwhelmingly busy processing a lot of other states and other things. I know how important it is for you wanting the design guidelines as quickly as possible. We're going to make every effort to have the design guidelines finished by the end of the spring. They will be adopted by an ordinance to be in tandem with the current ordinance, but we need the ordinance, this part done to set the stage for what will be in the design guidelines themselves. Once this ordinance, if you pass it, becomes effective, which will be December 15th based on its second reading, we will go ahead and implement the changes that are already there and respond in the appropriate manner per what's been changed. And so the hope of that will address that little piece. Now, when it comes to the surveys, we are required under CLG to update our inventory of historic properties on a fairly regular basis. The original surveys were done in the late 1990s, and we've never updated them. Just because we have a survey that identifies a property as being potentially now historically significant, which might quantify it as being eligible to be contributing, does not automatically move it from non-contributing to contributing.
What does?
I'll get to that. We have 2 mechanisms. We have a voluntary request of a property owner because there are a great deal of incentives and exemptions awarded to contributing properties if they're in a historic district. And we do have a number of property owners wishing to have their property moved from being non-contributing to contributing, and that can happen through a request to the Historic Resource Preservation Board through the ordinance change that we've done. The other mechanism is a redesignation of taking some properties from contributing to non-contributing, which might happen under the survey. We have a number of contributing properties that probably shouldn't be, and then vice versa. Ones that have now attained a level of significance or age that would warrant their being appropriately defined as being contributing versus non-contributing. And it would come before you and the Historic Resource Preservation Board through a recommendation as to whether we want to move those properties from a non-contributing status to a contributing status. It does not happen automatically.
Is there an appeal process where somebody that has gone through the system and feels that their property shouldn't be contributing, is there an appeal process that they can, you know, just like if I think you're charging me too much taxes, I can go to the tax collector?
That appeal process was actually the appeal period when the original designation was done.
So no.
Not right now. After the survey work, we will be having some discussions with the Preservation Board and likely a workshop with you as to what you like to do, say the properties that are now considered contributing that aren't really eligible to be contributing anymore. We would like to handle those as a separate item and maybe bring those forward and move them over. Do you want, how do you want to handle the ones that are now eligible to be contributing and aren't? That's for later, another time, but there is a way to get there. It just isn't an individual appeal process.
I just want to provide some clarification. William, of the 500 structures being surveyed, about how many do you think would fall into that category of potentially moving one way or the other?
Oh, wow. There are more that are now eligible to be considered contributing than non-contributing, and it's probably a few hundred that are not eligible, and most of them are from the 50s.
The current rules that you have in place that we're operating under now, the differentiation between contributing and non-contributing, is that line blurred?
Well, it's governed by an ordinance in which it was designated, and so you're
No, I mean how they're treated in the ordinance that we're dealing with right now.
the current ordinance treats essentially non-contributing and contributing the same.
Correct.
Okay, so I don't want anybody to get the idea, we're treating everybody the same right now.
Right.
We're clarifying this in the ordinance.
Not only clarifying it, we are
Right.
really relaxing the rules more so than a lot of other jurisdictions as it relates to contributing structures. So I while I understand you kind of getting off topic and get into the surveys, it's really not relevant for this because we really need to pass this if you want to relax the rules for your residents. If we don't pass it, historic preservation will continue to treat historic non-contributing and contributing almost the same. And that's been one of the complaints, that the two have been kind of joined. We do treat them a little bit differently, but it's not delineated in this ordinance anywhere. And this document now does that very, very clearly.
And I totally agree with you, and I think it's a step. I think we can do better. My biggest concern is that we don't go back to staff members being able to make a decision upon theirself, contributing,
Right.
non-contributing, because that's what was happening.
No.
I need to make sure that it doesn't get to a desk where they make a decision and.
It's one or the other. It's not a maybe or an if.
Commissioner Robinson.
I'm really uncomfortable with this. I believe in historic preservation. Now we're knee-jerking. If we don't pass this, it's the status quo of a problem. And you're saying this is going to solve all the problems.
No, I didn't say it was going to solve all the problems.
Well,
it's going to help.
It's a step, and I'm willing to take a step, but I don't like knee jerking from a problem to relaxation. If now we had a problem with, I didn't think we had a big problem with fences, but now we don't have any problem with fences. So I don't consider that a step forward.
Well, I can tell you this. If you would like to add fences back, I don't believe that the Historic Resources Preservation Board would be upset with that. That was something that was done to relax the rules a little bit, but it can certainly be added back to the ordinance to say that we will review fences.
I want some compatibility with the neighborhood. That's I thought the overriding intention of historic preservation.
Absolutely.
Is to have investment, getting rid of jalousie windows would seem to be a problem. And going back, I just want to quickly, the wording for the
page
11.
Okay.
Just that the facades visible from the municipal golf course. Well, we have other property that is visible, that isn't on the golf course, that I think we were referring to, that I just wanted to change. But a lot of the aggravation with historic preservation is in the we could legislate windows and doors and the minutiae of an applicant understanding that there is regulation, but the stress of your home is your home, and somebody's opinion of what's historically right is a conflict, and then waiting weeks and weeks for permits and approvals only worsens it only worsens it. The other thing is you're the first attorney that we had write this. Is that contract was complete and done? I mean, so I appreciate your efforts, but I don't quite understand why the contract wasn't fulfilled to have it approved by the state. I just, I thought it should have gone better the first time. Now we're at the second time, and I still don't think it's right, but we need to move forward with this. But part of the issue is how it's going to be dealt with by staff.
Commissioner Hardy.
Yeah. So let's start with something that Andy and I spoke about earlier, and that was home rule, right? So I was like a little bit disappointed the first time when we wrote this ordinance, and I think her name was Nancy Stroud, was the attorney that we hired originally. She did do too good of a job,
She did.
right? Responding to the concerns that we conveyed to staff based on calls and emails and Stop at Publix and all that stuff that we get from our neighbors. And so it was a little bit disappointing that we had to take the sharpest teeth out of the original amendments that we made. That said, the amendment to the amendment is still an improvement over what we've got right now. And that is something that I do appreciate. And probably the most important thing that we can do is start to differentiate in terms of the way that staff deals with contributing and non-contributing properties, to have that distinction a little more clearly defined. And I certainly appreciate that. And as regards, as far as what Herman said about compatibility with the neighborhood still being important, it's in here. It's in the ordinance. On page 11, for example, talking about new construction and changes to non-contributing buildings, that they're basically going to be, reviewed just to make sure that they are compatible with the neighboring properties, within the historic district, but not as strictly as, for example, some of the contributing structures. I agree wholeheartedly, and perhaps it's not a discussion for this ordinance or, for this amendment to the amendment right here, but I do agree that we need to provide some sort of due process for individuals who are going to have their homes deemed contributing. We need to give them a way to appeal, basically. I would agree with that. I don't care if it's one person. I don't care if it's a few hundred people. I don't care if it's a few thousand people. We need to give them that sort of due process, and at least get their input on the process, because in some ways you can consider having your property turned into a contributing property. You can consider that an encumbrance, and that's not something that anyone expects when they buy a home to have the rules change underneath their feet. And so that's really important that we give them that kind of relief. I do want to make sure that we are absolutely clear about one thing, and that is the ability that people have to harden their homes. I just want to make sure I'm totally clear on this. So let's take, for example, there's a lady who's got a home with lots of windows, and she wanted to replace these windows, and staff went to her house after she put in the application. She wanted to replace them with impact windows. And, impact windows obviously have more uses than just protecting your home in a hurricane, right? They improve your insulation, which is a goal. Obviously, we should want every homeowner to improve the insulation of their homes, because part of the bad rap that we continue to get with Lake Worth Utilities, even though we've lowered rates, right? People's homes aren't necessarily the most efficient, users of energy. And so, we should be doing things to encourage people to insulate their homes, right? And so obviously impact windows is part of that. So she puts in an application for impact windows. A member of staff comes by her home and says, you know what, your windows are not inoperable. Therefore, they cannot be replaced. They must be repaired. Well, you can't repair your window into an impact window. It just is what it is, right? You can repair the frame and all that stuff. And so I just want to make sure that if someone wants to take perfectly operable windows that are not impact windows and put in impact windows to harden their home and increase their insulation, that as long as they jive with whatever the architectural style is supposed to be, that they will, without a doubt, be allowed to replace those windows.
Well, the first thing is that I would hope that staff wouldn't pass by and see them changing the windows out. Let's say that they made an application
Right. Well,
for the windows.
That's what happened.
Yes,
Yeah.
I won't tell you that staff would not try to talk to the homeowner and try to get them to save the windows that are there if they can. However, under this ordinance, if they really want to have the impact windows, it is now allowed. They would have to make sure that it fits architecturally with the area. If single hung versus double hung, they have all this awesome speech that I still don't understand.
4 lights over one, the guy did that.
Right, they would still have to comply with that, but as long as they did, they would be allowed to put in the hurricane impact windows now.
And a follow-up to that would be, let's say that they have a very unique style of home, and a comparable impact window cannot be found. Maybe the market's not there yet. Yeah. And they've done their research, they've really searched hard, and the product just isn't available. What?
Again, I can tell you that
Sure.
the board would really try to convince this homeowner that with 56 windows, it would make a huge impact on the neighborhood to take out beautiful windows, if they could be saved, to put in the hurricane impact windows. However, in the end, if they really push for it and they could prove that they could not find the windows, the right windows that we want, that we would like to have, then it would be allowed. They would be allowed to put it in. Now, I'm assuming that this is a contributing home, and that means that it wouldn't be a routine in this scenario. It would not be a routine item that staff could just approve. It would be an issue that would go before the HRPB, but they would be able to do it.
This is
Right now, they would not.
Exactly, and so
I
that's
wanna
why
add that.
I
Right
do
now, they
consider
would
this right, which is exactly why this amendment is certainly an improvement over the status quo. And I understand that sometimes you can be biased towards action, but I think in this case, it's better that we act than not act. Hopefully, my last comment on this will be this. The status quo is really unacceptable, and I'm really glad that we're here to this point. And my hope for historic preservation's sake is that these amendments actually do what we want them to do, which is not to solve every problem, which is not to eliminate every complaint, but to eliminate 80-ish% of the griping, right? Much of which is very well deserved, right? Obviously, we have what historic preservation is a process in addition to your normal LDRs.
Right.
And there are going to be some people who object to that. Now, what I will say is that if we find that these amendments don't do what we want them to do, what I am going to ask this board to do and ask staff to help us do is to consider this. If these don't work, we need to clarify a process by which individuals who live in historic districts can have some kind of self-determination and vote for themselves as to whether or not they want to continue the historic district in which they live. So if these don't work and we continue to get complaints the same way that we have, then we need to give people in a historic district the ability to vote and just say, you know what, maybe we don't find any value in this, and maybe we don't want to do this anymore. And if they do, you know, we need to create a process for that, because right now there's no way to decertify a historic district, even if the people who live in the district, right, for whom these ordinances are written supposedly, right, even if they wanted to, there's no way for them to do that. So we need to create that kind of a mechanism. I think it's something we need to consider, certainly.
Madam Mayor.
Go
ahead.
Did the neighborhoods, sorry, this is a historical question that maybe you could help me with. Did the neighborhoods ever, like I know many residents have lived here for, you know, their families have lived in the same home and passed those homes on generations. Did they ever vote on becoming a historic district?
As I understand it, and I was not here.
I was.
I think it was several decades younger. As I understand, there was a process whereby the neighborhoods were notified that there was anticipation of a designation, and if you did not want to be in a district, you needed to send a letter or a comment or a vote to the city.
Correct.
Under a previous administration, which I did become aware of right when I first arrived, all the records in regards to who voted how and said what were no longer records that the city had.
Okay. Okay, that's one thing. Okay, go ahead.
I've got a couple of comments and questions. In no particular order, we've been at this almost 30 minutes, so we need to wrap it up. A lot of talk about windows tonight. My concern is that we should not be talking anybody down from the idea of putting impact windows on their homes. Okay. You know, I have a right to protect my asset. Okay. I have an absolute right, and you're not going to tell me, or anybody else is going to tell me, that I cannot protect my asset for something as fundamental as hurricane protection windows. Why I would be denied access to that protection when somebody 2 streets over has that protection is just not right. And if you are going to
Commissioner,
require, yes, ma'am.
just on that point, let me be clear. There is a difference between hurricane impact windows and hurricane protection. You can still, and I know that the staff approves hurricane protection all the time. You can still put up the.
I'm referring to windows.
Okay, I'm just saying,
No, I'm referring to
protection and
windows.
windows are not interchangeable.
I'm referring to windows. Okay. And if we are going to be in the business of telling people what their windows have to look like because they're in a historic district, I'm not waiting for a study from a consultant. I want an immediate list of every style of window that could be done, and that could be done by our staff.
Yes.
In right now, tomorrow. We could probably have, I don't know how many different styles of window, and you say, here, Mrs. Smith, Mr. Jones, whomever, these are the windows that are acceptable. Don't send them out there and ask them to go figure it out for themselves. Okay, they've already been put through enough crap to have sent them about their way, the way I hear some of these stories go down. This issue of the 25% cost consideration, now, was that just for the hurricane windows or is that all windows in general?
That is for all windows in
Okay.
general. Yes.
Okay, so if I'm the unfortunate soul that has a lot of windows, 25% is real money.
Yes. Yes. 25, but what number do you want it to be?
Well, I'm just saying, there's some people that just have an inordinate amount of windows. If they have to replace all their windows, it could be mondo bucks.
Well, what we're saying is, if the cost to replace them with the windows that we think you should have is 25% higher than the cost that you've come with your windows, your regular windows, I'll call them, then we will allow you to have your regular windows. So we will have windows in mind, and in some circumstances, those windows are going to be more than 25% higher.
And I like to see
I think
that,
that's for windows and for
I would like to
doors.
see that percentage lowered. 25% is significant.
One of the issues that the state had
I'm
was,
sure they did.
I'm going to keep going back to the state, was this ordinance's emphasis on money. You know, I know it's a very difficult concept, but with historic districts, money is not the primary factor. And they took issue with that.
Really?
You are preserving a home that is a contributing structure. like it or not, these districts do exist, and people voluntarily moved into these districts, understanding or not understanding that there are certain rules that you have to abide by. And sometimes those things are a little more expensive. So when we attempted to make price the most important factor, which is what the last ordinance did, that is just against all the Secretary of Interior standards, the state of Florida certification standards, and that is that's probably the most important reason to have your certification taken away. They will not lower the number, I can assure you. I talked to them about that number a bit. It was 35% before. We lowered it from 35% to 25%, and they had an issue with that.
I want to tell you something.
I know, I can
You can hear it coming?
I hear it coming. I hear it coming.
You can hear it coming. I think we need to have another conversation about the entire historic district designation process in the city. Because if you're going to stand there and tell me that the state saying money is not an object,
No, they didn't say it wasn't an object. They said it should not be the most important.
well, that's their opinion. And you know what opinions are like, right?
That's home rule.
That's their opinion.
Yes.
Okay. At the end of the day, we're here to serve the residents. Okay, and if the rules are too arduous, if the rules are too demanding, too restrictive, too expensive, then maybe we need to have a second bite at the apple.
And that may
But
be
I don't want people up here sitting at the dais, volunteers, thinking that now they know that money should not be the primary consideration, that they're gonna sit there and make additional comments like, well, it's only another $7,000 for your roof. Those type, I could just, I can't believe people would say that. Who do these people think they are? If you told me it was only $7,000, well then write me a check for $7,000. It's not your money and it's not your property. Now, there's a little bit more before.
Oh.
I think there needs to be a process for all denied historic applications to be reviewed by somebody other than the staff. I don't know what that process looks like, but we need to have a process so we make sure that people are getting what they're supposed to be getting in terms of service.
I believe that if you are denied, you can opt to appeal to the
Okay.
HRPB. And if you're denied at HRPB, you can opt to appeal to this
Okay.
city commission.
All right. The other question I have here is that respective to I think we should have a moratorium, a cutoff date, because the clock keeps ticking.
A cutoff date for,
The date's 50 years, 50-year
oh,
standard. I think we need to cut that off right now until we get this whole process sorted out and running the way it should be.
well, again, the survey is going to be conducted, and that will give you a great opportunity to look at what the new inventory is, and I think we will be able to make some adjustments. You will really be able to get your hands into the survey data. And if you decide that you don't want to include them, I don't think you have to.
I think you said we do want to get off point here. We're talking about the survey, but you did mention it yourself. So don't you hate it when that happens?
Yes.
So I have a quiz question. So we're going to pay somebody $50,000 to come out and look at homes. Can you tell me just exactly how much time they spent on one particular piece of property as they review the homes, or are they just looking at property files?
I'll let Mr. Waters answer that, but again, this was a grant that we got from the state.
I don't care where the money
So
comes
I
from. I
think
want to know how it's being spent.
We are only putting in staff time. I think it's like $15,000 worth of staff time.
It's not the money, remember? Money's not the primary consideration here.
What's your question?
I want to know how much time is physically spent on each individual property to determine whether it's contributing or non-contributing or a landmark.
What's the process?
It varies. And then the survey that's been completed, we have phase one that was done. And the report and stuff was submitted to us in July, 1st of August.
Is your microphone on? I'm sorry.
Yes, it is on. There were about 500 properties looked at. There were studies done of the state records, our building files, and there actually were field visits to go visit every single house and re-photograph every single house that may have been eligible to go from non-contributing to contributing and vice versa. I can't give you an exact number of minutes that they might have spent at each house, but I would think it's anywhere from 15 minutes to a half an hour was spent evaluating each property and then a report prepared. And we had records that show what the property looks like today and the reasons why it would move from a contributing backwards or from non-contributing forward.
Well, it's my understanding that over the years, particularly as it relates to the hurricane in 1928, there's a lot of records that are missing completely. So what are we doing for properties that don't have property files?
We evaluate what is on site, and these are experts in architectural history, architecture, and historic preservation, and can give a educated professional opinion on what the integrity was to the property. We do have a lot of building files that do show what was changed, maybe not the original building permit, but it may demonstrate what was changed during the history of the property. And remarkably, we have, good or bad, we have probably the best set of building file records that go back in history that I have ever seen in any city I've ever worked in. No one keeps the amount of paper Lake Worth keeps.
So are you contradicting the common thought that we are missing a lot of property files?
We are not missing property files. There's stuff that's not in them. We have a property file for every single property in the city. We did lose a few that were over in public services when their offices were condemned and they were not allowed to be retrieved. 2 years ago, I guess it was, and so we lost those.
What about the flood? The flood or the fire back in the 20s or 30s,
Yeah.
some of the old houses.
And but we do have a file for every single one, and there's a great deal of information. It's remarkable how many original plans we have and how many plans we have of properties that have changed over time. West Palm only has stuff back to about 1980.
Wow.
We have stuff back to 1915. It's not complete, but it's remarkably intact.
Okay, 2 more points. Number 1 is that subjectivity is something that I have grave concerns about.
Yes.
And how do we eliminate the subjectivity? I don't want staff making their decisions based on their opinion. It needs to be black and white, concrete, one way or the other.
Well, we've added some sections that, for example, staff is no longer going to review any alterations or additions to the backside or a side of a non-contributing structure that is not seen from a street. They'll just come in, we'll make the determination, nobody will look at that anymore. So that's pretty objective. Until we get the design guidelines, there will be some level of subjectivity because the ordinance is general. It is a general ordinance for the most part. And I cannot stress to you how much it was stressed to me in my conversations with the state, how much the design guidelines will help with all of those issues. So until then, there will be some subjectivity. Staff will make a lot more routine decisions, which means they will say yes, yes, yes to a lot more than what they do right now. And, that may make Commissioner Robinson unhappy because a lot less will be taken to the HRPB. That is the nature of this document. But all I can tell you is staff will be as objective as it can, considering that this board has made it clear with this document that they want to err on the side of assisting our residents with helping their homes to be safe and secure and insulated, as opposed to keeping the historic I don't want to say integrity because we want to make sure the historic integrity is kept intact, but at the same time understanding what the goals of this board is. And trust me, they hear you. They hear you, and this document shows that they hear you.
And my last statement is I would like to ask the commission to formally request a economic impact study to show the economic impact that the historic districts in the city has had since the day they were implemented. I want to know.
That's going to cost some money.
Well, you know what? It should have been done all along. It should have been done all along. I'm tired of hearing that historic districts add value. I'm tired of hearing that, it's don't worry about it. I want to know what the economic impact, positive impact has been to this city, because I'm not seeing it. These properties, by and large, are along the east coast of the city. They're along waterfront, which is very valuable. So we need to differentiate, what the appreciation of the values was between historic preservation and just the fact that it's located very close to a body of water. So I think that's really imperative that we do that before we move further, with anything else.
And I may be getting off on this, but one of the reasons that your historic districts, your beautiful homes have been preserved is because the district was there. Many of these homes would be gone right now. Many of your residents who are here would be gone because there would be these mansions on the water, which you find in other cities. You don't have that here because you have some, but for the most part, because you have a historic district, you have been able to keep your longtime residents in your city, and their residences, which you may not think is the most important economic, has the most economic impact for the city, it offers other things. So I don't know if the economic study will give the overall picture that a historic district probably should. And I'm speaking like I'm a historic person. I'm not, and I've learned a lot in the last year and a half, and it seems to have significant value.
But we need to quantify it. I need to be able to look a homeowner in the face when they're being told there's only $7,000 more for that roof. How that is improving the city and their neighborhood and their quality of life. That's what I'm really looking for. And if we can't quantify the impact, then why are we doing this? Because we keep saying it's adding value, but we're not unwilling to take that step and quantify it.
Duly noted.
I want to clarify a point too that the city attorney brought up. Even though the ordinance does stipulate that staff from a historic preservation standpoint will not be reviewing additions and alterations that are not visible from the street and behind non-contributing properties, how our system is set up, they will be reviewing those things to ensure they meet the regular zoning requirements that are in the land development regulations, which refer to lot coverage, height, setback, and floor area ratios. I don't want people to understand, I can just bring whatever I want in, and it's just going to get signed off on. Those zoning rules still apply.
With all due respect, I don't think that speaks to my question.
No, I actually wanted to make sure, because the public was hearing, I want to make sure they understand what Ms. Ryan was saying. We have had GIS start looking at, about 6 months ago, looking at the values of permits in our historic districts and the differential based on the property appraisers' values of those properties over time and compared to the other areas of the city that are similar. We can reinstitute that and prepare something. I'm not sure we have all the information to go back to the beginning of time when the designations were done, but we will ask the property appraiser's office to find out.
Okay. I think, Commissioner Hardy, I think you're up next. I'm sorry, your light is brighter, Madam Mayor. You go next.
I was first. I don't like being in this spot. Well, for just a couple things, because I lost my mind before and I couldn't remember what my questions were. There was one thing that you said earlier, and that's why I was going like this to you, because it kind of played along. You said very specifically, we will give them the recommendation of what we want, and if the person can find the suitable windows that we require, then we'll allow them to do what they want to do. You said those were your... Right. And let me differentiate. I'm talking about non-contributing homes. The decision on those kinds of windows for a contributing structure will still go to the HRPB for their decision. So the question again is, so say I'm in a historic home and I want to put all impact windows in my historic home, and I have old windows that are there. Maybe they're deteriorated, they could be fixed up, but I want to put all impact windows in my 1920s historic home. And you say, well, we prefer you didn't. Could you at least restore these old ones that are wood and such, and could you do that and
Correct.
keep hurricane shutters on them?
Yes.
Which I did, by the way.
Yes, that is what we would do. Yes.
But if I wanted to do that, could I do it?
Staff would do a report for the HRPB and would recommend allowing you to do what you want to do.
So
With all the information, they wouldn't just come and just say, allow them to have this. They would talk about how they attempted to help the homeowner keep their windows, the ones that are already there, the reasons why they don't want to do it. Maybe they can't do it. Maybe they can't afford to do it. It could be more expensive. It could be less expensive.
we have 42
But
windows in
the
my house.
recommendation, the staff is not the board. So the recommendation from staff would be to allow it per the ordinance. The ordinance is now more relaxed on that point, and therefore the recommendation to the board would be to approve it. I can't say that the board would necessarily approve it, but it
Right,
would come with
but
a
I could appeal it
recommendation.
if that's what it
And you
would.
could always appeal it.
Okay, now the question I have for you is, and I mentioned this before, because this is the one thing, I just want to reiterate that I believe in historic districts, and I chose my historic district, but I will tell you that the majority of people and my neighbors that live in historic districts don't know what that means to them,
I think
nor
that's
do
true.
nor do they know how. So we're talking about this survey, and I don't know the part that I missed when I was out of the room, but has everyone in this city been notified that they live in an historic district? I mean, we're spending all this money to do this and go here and go there. Has anybody been notified, every home that's either contributing structure or non-contributing structure, that hello, you live in an historic home? And then when that house gets sold by a realtor somewhere, they need to know, that could be part of whatever, that they need to know and let the person that's buying the home, this is a historic home and that requires X, Y, and Z. And then they can come to our website and see what it means to live in it. I mean, there's been no first of all, nobody voted on whether or not these homes should be historic. There's obviously, and I've mentioned this before, I'm sorry, sticking to it, the city manager's neighborhood is an historic, is not an historic area, and I'm in an historic area, and our houses are the same exact year old, built at the exact same time, and we live in the same neighborhood. But he doesn't have to be
Well, I can
historic.
tell you this, under this new ordinance, he can now apply to become a part of the historic
And
district.
he won't.
Because
Because he
we
chose his
added
neighborhood.
in here that a person, and we, believe it or not, you have residents who want to be historic because they get a tax exemption for that.
Which I never was
So-
notified of any of that, and when I did the
Oh.
13 projects of my home since 1990, or 2002, it would have been really helpful
Yes.
if the city, and in fact, I came to the city at that time and asked them, was there any help that I could get, because we're an historic neighborhood, and they said, we don't subscribe to any of those programs. That's what I was told.
Well, we subscribe to them all now, and when Mr. Bornstein.
Are they retroactive to
when we change
2002?
this ordinance, we are going to give him an application to be considered.
But I'm saying, but think about the process. I'm one of the residents who came here at that time when those neighborhoods were made. And these people are not,
Yes.
we weren't notified, we weren't given any tools, we weren't
Right.
given it. I mean, everyone didn't sign up because we're gonna get all these tax breaks and we're gonna,
Well,
I
I
knew I
can
was
tell you,
moving.
they're going to all know when the surveyor comes out and knocks on their door and starts checking out their home. They're gonna know they're historic at that point.
But shouldn't these residents be notified and know that they live in a home that requires,
They know.
they've come into it. I
They
don't.
just they don't
I
think
think
about
people
it.
that live in a home of my age do, but I don't think people that live in a CBS construction home that maybe was built in the 60s, or 70s,
Yeah.
I don't think many of those CBS homes or mid-century modern homes,
Right.
I don't think a lot of those people know that they have to adhere to historic rules.
Well,
I don't.
if it is the pleasure of this board, after we pass this on second reading, we could definitely do a mail out. We could do that
Right.
to every home
And then the other thing that I
with a
wanted
budget, because money matters.
and I think that it's more, this whole thing for me has been about the fact of, can we, we've heard a lot of different things because there's many employees come and go and they
Right.
handle things different ways and they say things when they
Yes.
shouldn't say things sometimes, or they don't, whatever. The instance I'll bring to mind is somebody who had an historic home that bought it, didn't know it was historic, wanted to put a certain roof on it,
Yes.
and had an employee say to him, well, you're driving a so-and-so kind of car, why should it matter to you that it costs a little more to do what we're asking? These are the kinds of mistakes that may have been said or happened in this community, and that's the kind of conversation that goes on outside of this community that doesn't look very good. And people still battling to this day over certain issues, whether it's garages, whether it's roofs, whether it's windows, whether it's doors. Those are the issues. What I think we're trying to do is to say, hey, if it looks like it, we make it look like it, and it's a modern day piece of manufacturing equipment,
Yes.
like an impact window, and I'll do the 4 over the ones, and I'll do the this and that, and I'll make it look like as long as it looks like that, and it's in a modern day. I mean, come on, just been inventions that
Right. You're right.
we've got to move with the times in regards to that, or else these homes aren't going to be standing.
Yeah.
And then let's also look. I want the commission to look at the cottages of Lake Worth. If this hadn't happened when it happened, I guarantee you a lot of those homes on 25-foot lots, those little bungalows, would have been torn down to build bigger houses, and none of those cottages would be still standing to make that project happen too. And it happened when it happened, that leaves some of that housing stock there to be reborn. I'm just using that because I'm playing devil's advocate here, okay? But the reason I say that is that some reference to it, if you want to enhance it, yes, you know, I just think there's a little bit of a catch-22, and we seem to be very militant on one side, and when people don't even know that this is a rule that they have to abide by. And realtors should be letting new residents know that their home it should be a mandate. They should know.
That mandate is already on the books.
Yeah.
There's a requirement for full disclosure. If a property is sold without full disclosure, there are rights that are for the purchaser that can be run back through a civil matter to the one who sold them. It happened to my neighbor's house. They bought a house and they were not disclosed that there were issues with the house. They found records that indicated the owner was fully aware of what was going on. They sued, and the seller had to pay up.
Okay. Well, lead paint, whatever the mandatory things that you have to go through when you
The historic designation is also one of them.
it's one of the ones. It's one of them, and you don't see it on any of the MLS reports when you go look at homes, or some of them, yes. Okay.
All right, one comment very quickly about the notification of potential buyers and existing homeowners. I think it might be wise if we check with the property appraiser and see if there's any way that we can have the property appraiser indicate on the property, whatever we pull up on the computers, that property is in a historic district. I think that would be
It's an
a
excellent idea.
good way to communicate.
Yeah.
It's an excellent idea.
All right, Commissioner Hardy, you've been waiting so patiently. This is our last bite at the apple.
Sure. And that's certainly very appropriate. So I do think we need a study, right? And I thought we needed a study when I looked at page 2 of this. And, you know, maybe in lieu of doing a study, we can maybe strike this from the ordinance. If you look at page 2, it says, further, the city commission finds that the historic districts of Lake Worth add to the economic vitality of the city. I don't know that we have found that. And so I would, you know, unless there's a study that we can point to. I understand there are studies generally, right, that say historic districts generally do X, Y, Z, A, B, C. I'm not convinced as to the conclusiveness of those studies, specifically as regards whether or not it's the historic district that's doing this, or whether or not, you know, these places are in downtowns or these places are located near water, et cetera. So that's one
So
thing.
you would like to see that section stricken?
Just that one, the add to the economic vitality. I do think it helps preserve the city's unique character and charm, and that their you know, their preservation helps perpetuate an environmentally friendly city. I don't know that that's true, because many of the homes are literally leaking energy, and I don't. Anyway, so that's that.
Well,
that's that.
they would say that by not building a new house, you are helping to save the environment.
Recycling.
Basically, you're keeping things.
I think that there's an
That's what that
argument
means.
to be made that might
Drink
be a
is a
stretch, and that maybe new homes might be better at
Okay.
using energy, among a few other things. And then I guess, you know, my last 2 points would be, you said something that was good, but you said it like it was bad.
Oh, what did I say?
You said that if we didn't
I
have this
do it a lot.
ordinance,
Yes.
if we didn't have this ordinance, we would have mansions on the waterfront. I don't, instead of
Well,
instead of
I
old
don't mean that
rickety-
as bad, but you know, one of the reasons, keep this in mind, I did not mean that in a bad way, but there are a lot of cities where there's been flight because people couldn't afford. I have a house, and that's why they changed the tax laws. I have a house. I've been living there for 30 years. Somebody comes next door and they build a mansion.
Right.
And before we had the tax changes,
Right.
that house, because of the value increase in that house, it would increase the value of my house.
Right.
I can't afford the new taxes. It runs me out. I have to move because I can't afford to stay there anymore. When you have historic districts, you don't have that issue.
Well, there is
Uh-oh,
a
here we go.
there are
We've been on this for an hour.
We're beyond a half hour.
well,
you're way
this
over
is
that,
this is a really important issue that a lot of people care very deeply about.
Yes.
And so, what I would say is that, there are lots of protections for people in the state of Florida. I don't know that other states have the Save Your Homes constitutional amendment, not even a statute, but a constitutional amendment that says no matter how much your home appreciates in value from year to year,
Yes.
and
that's pretty
your
new.
local government, that's like 1993, I think.
At least 20 years old.
Yeah.
Well, it's after this historic preservation, isn't it?
Well,
Oh.
the point is, your
I was just a
home,
baby in '93.
your home could appreciate. Let's say you've got $100,000 home. Your home could appreciate by another $100,000, and whatever local government that serves you can only tax you on 3% of that increase. And that I think protects people from some of the
It does now.
the
It does now.
the bad effects. But the real issue is that I don't know. You said that if we didn't have this ordinance, a lot of our old housing stock that is
Yes.
historic wouldn't exist because people would have built basically McMansions on it. I don't know that
On
that's
the
true,
water.
and I will tell you why. Because this ordinance is as old as what, 2003, early 2000s, right? 2002. Okay, so many of these homes in question are close to 100 years old. Right, one prominent citizen's home is 104 years old. So what we're saying is that naturally, these homes have been preserved for 75, 80 years, and that all of a sudden, because of this ordinance came on 80 years after the building of this home, that's what saved the home. I think it's more likely that this is true, that we have some unique housing stock that people are naturally interested in, and the people who are interested locate this housing stock, they buy it, they live in it, and they have protected the housing stock that we have naturally with the invisible hand of the market. And so I'm not, while I recognize that there are tons of benefits that we get from historic preservation, especially in the downtown area, especially as regards, the incentives that we have for spurring development, I don't know that this ordinance is what's saving our neighborhood so much. It's
Okay.
the people who are really interested in it.
Okay.
And that kind of brings me to, the last point. Like I am somewhat restrained in my approach to this issue, right? Because like philosophically, I don't just philosophically, I don't believe that historic preservation is the great thing that it's made out to be. My position is that basically we've got historic preservation. People have bought properties based on the expectations that have been created by this ordinance, and that stability is probably undervalued, and that whatever we can do to keep the idea of historic preservation while allowing people leeway is probably the direction that we should go. I'm not sure that this commission should mount an effort to destroy the historic preservation ordinance. Right. But what I do believe is that residents should have the ability to determine for themselves, and I don't want to be too glib here, but they should be able to determine for themselves the regulations to which they're subjected. And my original comment was that if these amendments don't work, we should clarify the process by which residents can vote to decertify the districts in which they live as historic. I think that we should clarify that process regardless of whether or not these things work. I think it should be something that citizens should be able to do to determine for themselves, what they how they want to live and what they want their homes to look like. And so I would ask that staff, and I don't know if we can get some kind of consensus, but I would ask that staff work on, and I guess that would be you, right? Work on drafting a process that we can look at in the very near future to add to this ordinance in addition to the amendments that will be voted on tonight.
Let me be clear on this. There is a process here. It is just an unwieldy process, and it's unwieldy. That's the best word I can come up with. So the process needs to be clarified irrespective of whether this happens. But let's let this happen, and then we will work on that, because that's also an issue. It has to go through HRPB, it has to go back to the state. Every change that we make needs to be approved by the state. But it will be something that we work on.
The design guidelines.
I'm sorry, just one last thing. And when I say that, I mean, residents of residential historic districts. For the downtown, I totally understand the real need to preserve our historic downtown. Developers don't really have that same care and concern. as people who might be buying a home would. I do think that there's a set of people who really enjoy the historic architecture and who buy it for that reason and who preserve it themselves.
But what about people who buy properties just to flip them? Like, there are people who will buy 3 or 4 homes in a historic area and come before HRPB demanding all of these changes that are not historic in nature, because they are not really trying to stay there. They're just trying to make a quick dollar. They're trying to spend as little as possible. I don't think we want to give those fly-by-night people an opportunity to make changes to our
If that was a
district.
question, may I answer it?
Well, okay. We're getting way past our limit.
Okay, all right.
We got Commissioner Robinson wants to go, and I still.
I'll be brief.
I want to answer the
Okay,
question.
and I still haven't gotten an indication one way or the other whether or not this commission is willing to have an impact study, a financial impact study done. I think that kind of got glossed over. And like you said, money is not the number one consideration here. So, and you've got language in this ordinance that says that we believe from the bottom of our little hearts that it's an economic driver. Well, you know what? Show me the money. Okay, because if we have to go down this road, late down in the process where we have to go back to the residents and ask them, then I'd like to have all of the information, okay, available to us. Commissioner Robinson.
Thank you. We've certainly expressed enough subjectivity up here tonight, I think, to clearly realize how difficult historic preservation is. The idea of it's been stated every time we go out and market the city that the economic impact of historic preservation. So that any money spent, I'm really not in favor of this, the guidelines survey. We have staff that are professionals, this thing should be working, but it's not working, and it's up to us. It's not, having the citizens have, as aggravated as they've been about historic preservation, asking them to vote on something that, like this, it's our responsibility to if we're going to have historic preservation in our town, it's certainly up to us to do it right. Asking somebody if they want to have broccoli is not a good policy, and it's up to us. We should take responsibility for a historic program, and if it isn't right, we need to fix it. The elephant in this tax credit thing is the Gulfstream to me, and if it wasn't for the Gulfstream, I've always asked, which would you rather have, historic preservation or an architectural review committee? I think at this point, as screwy as we've talked up here tonight, I think just an architectural review committee on the city would be much more workable than fussing about historic preservation in a few streets east of Federal.
Under Florida statute, architectural review boards just for architectural and taste are not allowed in Florida.
Okay, and in other words,
Theoretically, it's not. I know that it's not going to happen, but this is the subjectivity that we get into, and we know. Right. I think we all know that we have to pass this tonight to move forward if we're going to have historic preservation at all. If not, let's move on.
well, Commissioner Robinson, I take exception to your screwy comments up here tonight, because I think all of us have tried to express our thoughts.
Subjectivity.
Well, you got to start somewhere. And yes, the subjectivity is up here to create the objectivity. And frankly, the design guidelines were the linchpin, as far as I'm concerned, that should have been in place on day one. And I think that's what's caused this problem all along. And I've heard excuse after excuse after excuse as to why we didn't yet have them. Because it was never a priority for anybody, because everybody was having too much fun playing, whatever they were playing, whatever role they were playing, to tell so-and-so you had to put $7,000 more into your roof.
I certainly want to make fixing historic preservation a priority.
Okay, and the other thing is,
I
your comment about broccoli, I could challenge you and say, you ask people about broccoli the same way you ask people about the pool. Is that any different?
I'm taking my gavel back.
No, you can't do that.
Vice Mayor, I just want to let you know, since this item started, 5 more houses have become historic.
All right, so
Can we bring this in for a landing?
Let's move on. Let's take the vote. Do we have any comment cards, by the way?
Oh, are there any comment cards?
No, there's not. No, there's not. Somebody
Okay, all
trim
those
your-
in favor?
Here's Tammy.
Good for Tammy.
Tammy, where are you going? Oh, we're not,
It's upside down.
Oh.
She was going to comment.
He won't let me.
Tammy Panza, come on down.
He won't let me resume.
You want me to read the card?
He's coming during the agenda item.
Oh, my Lord, your handwriting is just wonderful.
They have to be in before the end of.
It says, number 1, roofs, windows, doors, fences should be facilitated to enable homeowners to update, repair, preserve, protect their homes in a timely fashion. You got to watch, get that printed card with the line there. It adds another character to the word. Number 2, can the city staff, oh, that's number 4. Number 2, also, please, there's a lot of please, provide guidelines for assisting homeowners in the process. Number 3, thank you. Do the changes address roofs, windows, doors, and fences? And number 4, can the city staff do the study? Which study are you referring to, Ms. Panza?
Survey.
Okay. And next up, thank you for your comments, Marty Wellfeld.
Marty Wellfeld, 829 North Lakeside. I have to do this quickly because I got a few points I want to touch on in my 2 minutes that are allotted.
Three.
So 3, oh, okay, I can
Oh,
relax.
it is-
Okay.
It is 2.
It
It is 2, you're right, I'm sorry.
Don't listen to her, she's new at this.
I apologize.
I'll wait for the bell.
Yes, we'll give you 2.
First of all, I got to tell you, I have one basic problem with this idea of a 50-year age on a building for historic designation. When I was living in Chicago, I lived in a 102-year-old building. It's older than that now. And it was just an old building. Up and down the block were all sorts of buildings the same age. And they looked very nice. And we had no historic preservation because it wasn't historic. In Chicago, to be historic, you generally have to, survive the Chicago fire in 1871 or something like that. There is a logical, time-based trigger for the historic designation. Down here, it might be what? Oh, when Florida was admitted to the Union, the end of the Civil War, post-World War II. 50 years ago, that's 1967. Of course, you're right. People that live in cubicle CBS homes don't have any idea that they're historic because, folks, they aren't. Okay, another point here. You talked about realtors. Survey some realtors. See what they say about showing historic homes to potential home buyers. Let's talk about what that does for pushing the city of Lake Worth up that financial hill towards success. Not much. I was in the meeting, Scott, where we had that $7,000 question. It was windows, not a roof, but what the hell? I'm just happy that nobody said it was just going to cost me $7,000 more. We have seen an incremental, how should I put this, culture of overreach with regard to this. At one point, I was sitting in a meeting here where there was an attempt to declare that the alleys were thoroughfares, which would then have given historic preservation the right to control the back facade of the house. The pendulum has swung the other way now. I'm sorry. If you want to do this, you got to do it right because you're going to wear it all the time, and nobody is going to give you any slack, me included. Everybody sitting up here is a personal friend of mine. I love you all. But this is a festering sore in the city of Lake Worth. I think we have a mistake in pushing this forward. I mean, I sit in a home that was built in 1981 in a historic district, so I'm not a historical home. It's not even an issue of contributing or not. And it still took me 11 and a half weeks to get a permit for a white metal garage door not facing the street to be replaced with a white metal garage door not facing the street because it got stuck in historic considerations review, et cetera. I'm done. Thanks for the rant.
Well, are we ready to vote, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? No opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan.
Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you, Pam.
Item number 12, new business, ordinance number 2017-23. Oh, you can't take it back.
I'm taking it back.
You leave? I lead. First reading, small-scale future land use amendment and scheduling second reading and public hearing for December 5th, 2017. Would you, city attorney, please read that ordinance by
With
title?
pleasure.
Why are you doing this?
Okay, then you can have the next one.
I'm here.
I think he's going to try to save your voice.
Yeah.
He's being a gentleman for once. Let it happen.
Go ahead. Read the ordinance, Glenn.
Ordinance number 2017.
Quiet in the chambers, please.
Ordinance number 2017-23 of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, amending the comprehensive plan by providing a small-scale amendment, change to the future land use map of certain property more fully described in Exhibit A from a City of Lake Worth future land use designation of mixed-use East MUE to a City of Lake Worth designation of artisanal mixed-use AMU, providing that conflicting ordinances are repealed, providing severability, and providing an effective date.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
Any public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
Seeing there are none, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to item B. City Attorney, would you read the ordinance?
Yes, Madam Mayor, ordinance number 2017-24 of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, changing the zoning of the property described in Exhibit A from a City of Lake Worth zoning of mixed-use East MUE to City of Lake Worth zoning of artisanal industrial AI, providing that conflicting ordinances are repealed, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor,
Seconded.
seconded by Commissioner Hardy. All those in favor state, oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Public
Madam
comment
Mayor.
cards. Seeing there are none, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Now, remember, we moved items C, R, and S to C and D under new business. They were from the consent agenda. And that is, resolution number 66-2017 is R, from the consent agenda. Revision to the residential rates, fees, and charges of FY 2018 for the water system. City Attorney, the reason I moved these is because we had conversations and I received angry phone calls and pitchforks and torches
Me too.
over water meters and charges on utility bills and
Yes.
all, things that we were not made aware of, and I was unable to answer where those charges came from and why those charges were there. So I wanted to bring this.
But I believe you have to have a motion to
I'll entertain
go
a
on with
motion.
this.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Amoroso, seconded by Commissioner Hardy. Public comment cards? There you go.
Seeing none.
Seeing none. You're up.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Brian Shields, Water Utility Director. Let me try to
Sorry to
simplify
throw you to,
this.
Sorry to
or-
throw you to the wolves, Brian.
No, that's okay. I'm just trying to recover from the last item and gather my thoughts.
Do you have
But-
any left from that?
Yeah, I had all these thoughts in my mind. But let me, without getting into much detail of water utility, rate making, design, and all that, there's three components of our water rates. There's capacity charges, there are base fees, and then there are commodity charges. And each is intended to recover certain costs. What happened was, we also have three different documents out there. We have the resolution, which was adopted on September 26th, being effective October 1st. Then we have a customer service handbook, and we have a public services handbook. And all of those have different versions of how we deal with our rate making. And we wanted to make those consistent in the resolution that was adopted on the 26th. So we were incorporating the calculation of ERUs into meter size. And what that means is an ERU is one single family home, which is generally a 5/8 by 3/4 inch meter. So in order to make those three documents consistent, we put in a table in the rate resolution that had 3/4 inch meter, a 1 inch meter, an 1.5 inch meter equal X amount of ERUs. So for example, an 1.5 inch meter is 5 ERUs. What that's used for, and was mistakenly used for, it should be used only for the capacity charge. So when a new developer comes into our system and is building a new property, building a new development, they pay capacity charges, and those charges are intended to cover the cost of our big assets, the plant, the tanks, the major transmission lines. So that's what those ERU calculations are intended to be used for, and what they should be used for. So when that got into our rate resolution, just to clean that up, It was then taken by the people that actually do our computer programming in the Naviline system and put into the base facility charges where it shouldn't have went. So everybody pays the same base facility charge. It was like $14 a month. And I was alerted to this myself by the middle of next week when I received the call. Someone called me about a leak adjustment credit, and I said, are we talking about a leak adjustment or something else? He says, no, I want to downsize my meter. I said, why? He said, well, I used 800 gallons, but I got a bill. My bill went up like $56. I said, that doesn't make sense. Let me look into it and see what you're talking about. That's when I come to find out that these charges were applied to our base facility charges. So anyone that had an 1.5-inch meter, their water bill went from base charge of $14 to like $70. So recognizing that right away, that's why you guys were getting the calls. So immediately I started looking into it. So within a 2-day period, I had uncovered what had happened in this programming issue. So said we need to correct that. So we've got it on tonight's agenda to clean that error up. We sent out postcards actually to everybody that was either potentially or actually impacted by this directly to them. So they got a mailer out by Friday. We got with the PIO, Ben Kerr made that happen. So everybody's been notified. Everybody will receive a credit, and that'll be cleaned up by tonight's Scrivener's error correction. So hopefully that sums it up in a nutshell.
Did it affect all of the residents?
No, it affects only those with larger than a 3/4-inch meter, which is very few in comparison. Let's say we have 28,000 customers. About 1,000 have a 1-inch meter. Less than 200 have an 1.5-inch meter, and less than 50 have a 2-inch meter. So it's a very small percentage of our overall customer base, but we did notify them all directly. But it is, 1,000 people that received a $14 increase. Many of them probably didn't even notice that, but some did. But the ones who had an 1.5-inch meter, the most impacted, received like a $56 increase in the base charge. So they'll all be credited in next month's bill. So luckily we caught it in the first bill.
Okay.
Okay.
This wouldn't have reflected big volume increase.
No, not at all.
Okay.
The volumetric charges.
Quiet in the chambers.
The volumetric charges only went up by 2.75%. That was adopted after all the budget hearings we had with Stan Tech and the modeling and all that.
We had lowered it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We've got a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Don't think we need to
Thanks for
vote.
the explanation.
Okay, thank you. I hope it clears it up.
Also, resolution, the item S is also moving to, which is revision to the residential rates, fees, and charges. Motion by Vice Mayor, second. Second by Commissioner Amoroso. What is the explanation there? Is it relating to that last one?
Yes.
It was just to adopt that one, okay. All right, all those in favor state so by saying aye. And I saw no cards, sorry.
No cards.
No cards, thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, City Clerk. Okay, thank you. We're moving on to Lake Worth Electric Utility. Come on down.
Mr. Ed Livery.
All right, I did some quick math. We have about 8 more years before the power plant goes into historic preservation. So
I thought it did already.
Wait, which one? The 60s? Depends on where you count from. But we are going to try to do something with it long before that.
Did you? I know.
Yes. Okay. Quick update on some of the things I heard tonight. Lighting. I heard lighting discussed earlier on. We did complete the lighting survey citywide. There are 718 lights that were out as of about 10 days ago when we completed the survey. We've started to do the repairs. We've gotten through about 83, which is moving too slow. So we're asking for an outside contractor to give us some thoughts on how they would be able to tackle it quicker to see if we can get this moved on much faster than we can currently get to it with our own staff.
Estimate of time?
Well, at the rate of 83 in about 10 days, it would take months for us to get through the fleet, and on top of that, more go down every week. So I want to make sure we get ahead of it. So if we can get a contractor in, we're waiting to hear from them what they could do, how they could mobilize, what it might cost. But I'd like to see it done in a matter of a month as opposed to many months, because we are in the long nighttime period of the year.
When we do those estimates, we're also estimating, because a lot of times you'll hear from staff members saying, why we can do that ourselves. We can do that ourselves. We can do that in-house. I know sometimes it can and sometimes it can't. I mean, do we ever look at the cost of what it is to offer, extra hours to our own staff as opposed to these contracts when we bring in outside help to see what the cost differentials would be to give our guys the ability to get extra jobs as opposed to bringing in an outside company? Is it always more money?
It's very expensive to work them overtime compared to the contractor rate, generally speaking. I need to look at this specific case. The productivity is not what it would be for a contractor because they're working on overtime now. They've already worked their base 40 and they're tired and they're coming in working at night or on a Saturday or Sunday. And you just don't have enough people. Once you work those people overtime, then they go into the rest periods. It affects them being able to get back to their normal work that you'd want them on Monday morning or the next morning of the workday. So it big picture, it doesn't work.
Okay.
It doesn't work. It's just not sustainable. And we need to get caught up. Gas turbine 2, GT2 repairs. The estimates are coming in. I'd rather not comment on that publicly, what those numbers are, because we're still waiting for some numbers. But the power plant managers are gathering those numbers for the repair. So the inspection is complete, and we have the inspection report. And there is a resolution, I think, on the books tonight to approve that.
honestly say that it's a whole lot less than a new one.
You know what? Hold on a second. Commissioner Ambrose has his light on here. Thank you.
No, go ahead, because he's on that. I have going
Commissioner
back to lights.
Robinson, yeah. I gotta recognize you first.
I can't see his light.
It is a whole lot. It is a whole lot less than building a new one. We would rather have not had to spend this much money on this old of a unit, but we need it to get us by for a few more years yet. So it's unavoidable and money well spent. At this point, we don't have a choice but to spend the money to repair it. The good news is that there are spare parts in the marketplace still, even though it's nearing that historic designation. There's still a lot of parts in the marketplace from others who got there before we did and sold their units for parts.
Commissioner Ambrose, you ready now?
Two questions. It seems like, I've been here all my life, I've been through a lot of hurricanes. It seems like there's a lot more lights out with these new lights. In your opinion, is there something that we need to be doing? Is it an easy fix? We just don't have the manpower. Why are there so many lights out?
That's a good question. I don't necessarily think it's associated with the lights. It may have been associated with the way that the wiring was installed. The heads are still on the poles. It doesn't appear that the new heads blew off. They're there.
That's a wiring issue.
There appears to be a wiring issue, or it could be as simple as a photocell. So we won't know what the problem is until we actually start to work the problem.
Okay, and not that all lights aren't important, but there's a few out on Lake Avenue, and there's a few out on 10th Avenue North. If we could, those are
Right.
main drags. If we can kind of look at, if we're limited with manpower, if we can kind of look at those in the higher traffic areas first.
I'll check on those. I know you pointed those out to me about 10 days ago, and staff was going to focus on those. So if you're telling me they're not done yet, I'm disappointed. I'll address that with staff tomorrow.
They weren't, but I'll check it again.
Okay, I'll follow up on that.
Thank you.
So GT2, back on GT2.
Commissioner Maxwell.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ed. The 700 plus lights represents what percentage of our total?
Do the math real quick. There's a little over 4,000, so it's about
15%.
15+%.
Okay.
Yes.
My obvious question in my mind is, and you started to go there. Where's Siemens in all this? What is the warranty? Their responsibility at this point? Seems like an awful lot of lights.
It is, but not all of these are Siemens lights. This includes all street lights that we're responsible for. This would include the Village of Palm Springs, the ones here in the town, DOT lights as well. So it's all of the lights that we're responsible for maintaining.
So our customer base outside of the city did not get the new lights? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, only in our service territory, not in the rest of, not all places.
Okay.
So about 557 of those, by the way, are in the city. Another 161 are outside of the city.
Okay, and the other, going back to Commissioner Amoroso's thoughts about some level of prioritization, is there any way, would it be inappropriate for me to ask you to partner with the sheriff's office and start with the highest crime areas first? If there's any lights out there, get them
Yes,
done first?
absolutely.
City manager?
No, are you through, Vice Mayor? I'm sorry.
Well, I am now. Let me go dark.
High traffic area.
Ed, prior to Irma, how many lights were out?
We don't have a good count of that because there were no good logs kept.
But
of
it
the lights
wasn't,
route.
it wasn't 800.
I don't think it was 800, no.
Okay.
No. It was probably less than that.
Let's not be dismissive of the fact that we had a
Right.
storm.
No.
Which was.
And what I wanted to do when I asked for the survey was almost let's wipe the chalkboard clean. I want a clean list as of a point in time so that we can start from there. And that database is now created.
In non-storm time too,
Yes.
so we can see
Yes.
what actual just wear and tear is on those
Right.
lights.
And I've asked staff to give me a report weekly of how many lights are out, how many were repaired the prior week, month to date, year to date, so that we can keep records. My concern, or I want to make sure, is that we have enough people dedicated to maintaining the lights and that we're not in a downward spiral that we can't keep up.
Vice Mayor.
It brings two more questions to mind. Number one is, as you go through and identify what the issues were and come up with some type of hopefully we'll have some explanation as to why there's so many. It seems like there's an inordinate amount. The other question I have is, wouldn't it be prudent for us to take a look at how we could harden those lights everywhere? Because obviously the storm had some impact, and so we don't have to go through this again. While the light systems are new, the wires are new and crisp and all that, would this be a good opportunity to consider somehow hardening these wires so the next time we have a storm, we have a minimal amount of
It would be that the problem a lot with lights is they're lower on the pole and much more susceptible to vegetation impact. So unless we put them underground, those feeds are coming from a lower point on the poles. So it would be more difficult. But we are looking at, when we do the repairs, determine what is the nature of the repair that was required. So was it associated with the installation, the quality of the installation, or was it something else that caused it?
Also, I had a constituent concern here recently. They apparently have a couple of optional security lights at some point that were installed on their property. And I understand there's some sort of an upcharge for that.
Yes, there is.
And my question is, number one, how long does it take to get a security light repaired if that's called in? And number two, the question is, how long does it take typically if a light is reported out? Do we have dedicated personnel that all they do is go out and fix, lights that are down?
No, unfortunately, we don't. We don't have a dedicated crew just for lighting. We've been talking about that as I've been asking more questions around the number, as I get my arms around it and say, well, how do we get at these? Well, we basically work on lights when we don't have something else of a higher priority to work on. So we need to reassess the priorities. My thoughts are to create a crew that would be perhaps of a lower classification than linemen that work on the higher voltage stuff, but a crew focused just on lighting. My understanding is that some number of years ago, such crews existed within the city, and over time, they were morphed into other functions or done away with. I'm now reconsidering that. As a matter of fact, I've asked that lighting be looked at as a business and that we manage it as a discrete product with people who are given the privilege of focus to work on lighting.
Well, going back to the optional security lighting, it seems to me if I'm paying an upcharge for that, there should be a rapid response as far as repair is concerned versus perhaps a street.
Yeah, where we did get some calls in that where folks had complained that their lighting had been out for some period of time. Upon closer investigation, we confirmed that the lighting was out, but they backed away from their claims as to how long the lights had actually been out and when they had made calls. But that's not everybody, but in a couple of cases we found that. But it has to be a higher priority. I agree. If I'm paying for lighting and the lighting's not working, I've got to be questioning why I'm paying for it, right?
Right, thank you.
I think that's a reasonable request.
And just to finish up on this, along the same lines, I thank you for identifying that, putting it together. But I don't remember so many lights ever being out during storms or anything. So as you work through it, maybe, setting up a separate, light department, so to speak, and then also a maintenance program, for these lighting. If this is a lighting issue that's going to happen more with vegetation, small vegetation. I know this storm came sideways. I watched it,
Right.
so the vegetation hitting those small lights. But what does a maintenance program look like? And what's that going to cost us as far as having the next level of a lighting crew?
Right. That's part of why I've asked for this weekly report, so we can get an assessment of actually how many lights on average are failing per week, what the productivity is of the workforce to address those issues, so we can then determine, is it something that we should be using our own people on, or perhaps have a contract with a service to maintain lighting for us.
Because one of the
So
things
we have to investigate all of
One of
those.
the things we've been focusing on is the health and safety of our community based around lighting.
Right.
And if, we have 800 and some lights down
Mhm.
in what, Vice Mayor said,
That's a lot.
in heavier crime areas,
Mhm.
you know, it doesn't help.
Right.
Yep. I just wanted to second the Vice Mayor's suggestion that we work in conjunction with the Sheriff's Office to determine priority for lights coming on. You know, the other thing is that I don't know that there is any sample size at all for previous storms knocking lights out, because we literally haven't had one in 10 years, you know, aside from Matthew, which didn't really hit us. So I'm not too quick to draw too many conclusions about the integrity of the system, or, you know, of these new lights that we have overall on the basis of this one storm. Now, that said, if we got a tropical wind, you know, come by and you know, next week 700 lights were out after, you know, replacement, then okay, then, you know, we've got an issue. But I'm hoping that it's because we had a very major, you know, historic storm pass through our state, and that you know, we got good lights here on a good system.
So
And thanks for that. By the way, your approach to the lighting issue is certainly something that the residents of the city would certainly love to hear, that you're approaching lighting this way as a business, as a product.
Yep.
Because of the people in the city, it totally is, right? And it's something that they think of separately, really, from our electric utility.
Yes.
That it's, you know, the lights out on the street, it's like what makes them feel safe and secure. So I really appreciate you thinking about it as something separate that we need to deliver to our residents continually. I appreciate that a great deal.
Oh, you're welcome. And to add to that, one of my concerns was that we don't know what we don't know. So I got the feeling that maybe people gave up and stopped calling. So until we did that full sweep of the system to determine for ourselves at a specific point in time, meaning 1 week, what is the true list, and really nail that down. So now we have a complete picture. I'm not sure that we ever had a complete definitive picture in the past, but now we have one that we can work on.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, then moving on to the consent agenda.
I have more.
Oh, you do?
I have more. Okay. On the update, we are finalizing the RFQ for the 26 kV upgrade, which is our system hardening and reliability improvement project. We're just giving you an update on where that stands. We're finalizing that and getting that ready to go. Probably within the next week or two, Walt will have that ready to get out on the street to solicit the engineering and contractor resources that will be necessary to tackle that project. We do have an RFQ on the street already, so we're in the cone of silence, as you know, on the generation and transmission improvement plan. So I can't go into a lot of comment on that. But that is out there on the street, and the responses are due back slow in the next week or so. And we've had at least a few questions, which we're providing answers to for the respondents to work on. So that's in progress. There's been a lot of discussion lately around FMPA and Vero, mostly Vero's exit. So we've been following that. It is complicated. We'll be talking more about that. FMPA did come to the EUAB meeting and make a presentation, which was difficult. They got some very tough questions that they had to go back and get some more answers on. They'll be coming back for an additional meeting with staff next week on the 14th in the morning, I believe. On their way to Homestead, they're going to stop here and chat with us a little bit. They had a conference call with a group of the cities in the ARP, the All Requirements Project, on Friday. That was long 2+ hour phone call. There seems to be a lot of background chatter between the cities about what the impact to each city is, more along the lines of how much documentation there is to review in time to approve the transaction, and what the remuneration will be to the cities with regards to the costs that they're incurring, and even reviewing the documents with outside counsel, which each city's either going to have to use extensively inside counsel, but also other outside counsel with expertise in those areas. So it's not as simple as just getting along and going along. There's a lot to look at for us all.
Do we still have a seat, a commission seat on FMPA?
ARP, but there's no vote because we have 0%.
Okay. I didn't know if we still have an active participation. Okay.
We do actively participate, although our rights are at 0. Right. However, we do have a liability yet in the ARP, even though our rights are at 0. We are participants in the Stanton project and in the St. Lucie project. So we would actually have to sign 3 sets of documents, one to release Vero from the ARP, another one to release them from Stanton, and another one to release them from St. Lucie. So what was those?
If we release them, do our costs go up?
Well, that's part of what we're trying to get clarified about the long-term liabilities is really where the exposure may lie. We want to know completely what that means and what the potential, so, and staff's working on that.
You'll bring that back.
And we've also received a proposal from FMPA in regards to participating in a solar project that FMPA is putting together. They've shared some information with us, and they're looking for us to participate in the project. At a high level, what that project would involve would be FMPA working with a private developer who's going to build somewhere between 75 megawatts to 150 megawatts of solar at 2 potential sites here in Florida. That is a competitive solicitation. FMPA is negotiating with 2 large developers for that.
Lake Worth up for it?
We're interested in participating, in meaning buying the power from the project, not taking an ownership interest at all. Our site is much too small to participate in the project. The economies of scale that they get and the participation that they want really require building something at least 75 megawatts in size, probably up to 150 megawatts in size.
We have room in our Park of Commerce.
Maybe for a few hundred or less than 100 kW, but nowhere near the space needed for that. But the pricing is very attractive.
Can't blame a
and,
girl for trying.
you know, we tried even asking that a portion of the panels be installed here, and we didn't make much progress on that. The economies of scale are just too great on the
You
sites.
need me to
we're
go
looking at.
talk to them.
Anything would help. I know somebody. I'll send somebody.
I got a guy.
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy.
No, I was gonna make a joke and say if they wanted to build it somewhere completely useless, they could build it on FSU's football. But it's
Point of order. Point of order.
That was harsh.
That was harsh.
You know, that's
I'm
twice
not even
this
an FSU
today.
Hey, we got more business before we have to extend the meeting, so let's wrap this up.
World.
And so we're working on that, and also assembling the team, which will lead us into the renewal or renegotiation or refresh of our power purchase agreement.
Thanks, Ed.
So that's all underway.
All right. Moving on to the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Commissioner Hardy, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor
Aye.
state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. City Attorney, do you have anything for us?
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving,
That's all you got?
everyone.
That's all I got.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
All right, City Manager.
I just wanted to announce that I'm participating in No Shave November, much to my wife's chagrin.
I was wondering why you were looking a little straggly over there.
The more you cover up, the better you look.
And just one note too, our prayers and condolences go out to any victims we've had in the last several weeks here and some crimes that have happened within our community. And we're going to come together and talk about that in the coming weeks. And our thoughts and prayers, of course, to the families and their loved ones and to all those impacted in the community. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by Vice Mayor Pro Tem Amoroso. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everyone. Thank you for bearing with my wheezing and sneezing.